I get so excited about being here, and then I just roll. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this regular meeting of September 14th, 2023 to order. I'd also like to thank our live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us tonight. And we live stream our meetings, and you can find that link from the district's website. If you all please rise and join with me singing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I move to approve tonight's agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for the board meeting of September 14th, 2023 as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Savada.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Cooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Great, the agenda is approved because we're taking here as yes. All right, we're going to move on to the most wonderful thing we get to do as board members, which is honors, recognitions, and proclamations. Every month, the Board of Education has the distinct pleasure of recognizing students, staff, community members, and schools for their achievements and contributions to our community. Additionally, the board publicly recognizes special events and significant issues by issuing proclamations. In the month of September, we are commemorating National Attendance Awareness Month, International Literacy Day, National Suicide Prevention Awareness Week, and National Arts and Education Week. We encourage you in your abundant free time to go onto the district's website and read the full proclamations, and they are also found as part of our consent agenda in board docs. So now moving on to honors and recognition, I'm going to hand it over to Director Miller to kick us off.
Thank you so much, President Schooley. For our first recognition of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to recognize our Student Services Suicide Prevention Awareness and Crisis Response Team. Do we have them all coming up? Thank you. Would you like to join us? First, the celebration of the evening. The Board of Education is pleased to celebrate our Suicide Prevention and Crisis Recovery Team for their work to create healthy school environments through prevention, intervention, and education. We invite Suicide Prevention and Crisis Recovery Leads Michelle Gonzalez. Is Deb? Thank you. And then Terry is not here this evening. Okay, and Terry Mulderman to the front. So thank you for Deb and Michelle being here this evening to receive this award. Yeah, awesome. Can't decide if I can see them. Tonight we are recognizing our Suicide Prevention and Crisis Recovery Team that, under the leadership of Chief of Student Success Matt Polero, is committed to destigmatizing suicide in Jeffco. They have made tremendous progress in a short period of time in raising awareness throughout our community about suicide, including prevention, early warning signs, available mental health services, and community resources. Utilizing the latest research in the field of suicide prevention and following the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's model school district policy, their work is ingrained in Jeffco's efforts to improve the emotional and behavioral health of students, from prevention to intervention to postvention. The Suicide Prevention and Crisis Recovery Team is dedicated to offering a comprehensive evidence-based suicide prevention program to our Jeffco students and community. This team's efforts are collectively supported by school leadership, school resource officers, school mental health staff, educators, support staff, athletic coaches, parents, students, and the greater Jeffco community. All of us are partners in awareness and prevention. In addition, recognizing this incredible team tonight, the board is issuing a proclamation in honor of National Suicide Prevention Awareness Week, recognized September 10th through the 16th in Jeffco Public Schools, which was noted earlier by President Schooley. Please join us in recognizing the Jeffco Student Service Suicide Prevention and Crisis Recovery staff for their often 24/7 work to ensure that Jeffco students have positive, safe, and healthy school experiences. Thank you so much.
All right, I get the privilege of recognizing the next recipient for our Learners, Our Future. For our next celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to recognize Arvada West High School student Isabella Quimby. Isabella is a recipient of a silver medal from the 2023 National Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America competition. And on my script, Isabella, please come to the front of the room. Welcome, Izzy. How are you? Yay! All right, now I'm going to stand or sit and talk about you for just a little bit. All right. Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America is a national career and technical student organization for students pursuing family and consumer sciences education. FCCLA offers intercurricular resources and opportunities for students to pursue careers that support families. Since 1945, FCCLA members have been making a difference in their families, careers, and communities by addressing important personal, work, and societal issues through family and consumer sciences education. Through participation in competitive events like nationals, high school students acquire industry insights and employable skills required to thrive in the 21st century. Competing on regional and district, state, and national levels in competitive events enables students to explore career pathways and address significant personal, work, and societal issues. Under the guidance of FCCLA co-chairs, Anna Hirschauer and Anna Sorzano, Isabella developed and taught Teen Choices classes at A West. Her Teen Choices classes highlighted key life skills, including the difference in relationship dynamics between respect and kindness. In addition to teaching, Isabella crafted a presentation called Focus on the Children that qualified her at the state level for 2023 nationals. It was with this presentation that Isabella won silver. Congratulations. All right. AWES Career Technical Pathways, like Family Consumer Sciences, aligns with Jeffco's mission to prioritize programming options designed to help students develop specific lifelong skills in character development, creative and critical thinking, interpersonal communication, practical knowledge, and career preparation. Let's give another big round of applause to Izzy for earning a silver medal. And now I'm going to turn it over to Director Reed.
All right, and I get to present for Our People, Our Strength, the Stony Creek staff for creating a window display of inclusion and belonging to welcome students and staff. Mariah Nixon and Alex Dalvitt are our next honorees. Mariah and Alex are education support professionals at Stony Creek Elementary School. Mariah and Alex, please make your way to the front of the room to receive Our People, Our Strength recognition. In preparation for the start of the 2023-2024 school year, Mariah and Alex created a school display showcasing community and belonging to welcome back students, staff, and the Stony Creek community. The display calls the Stony Creek community to action to share our similarities and celebrate our differences. A heart-shaped world in the middle of the display shows hands reaching out from the world to embrace the community. This display embodies Jeffco's values of equity and belonging and makes a connection to our mission to provide a world-class education that prepares all Jeffco students for bright and successful futures as local and global citizens. Beyond its implications for mental health, belonging plays a specific role in education. Research shows that belonging positively affects engagement, behavior, and academic performance. When learners feel that they belong in the educational setting, student engagement increases, negative behavior incidences diminish, and academic achievement improves. Please join us in celebrating Mariah and Alex for living our district values and reminding us of the importance of prioritizing belonging in support of student success.
All right, I'll turn it over to Dr. Barda.
Okay. I also get to recognize in Our People, Our Strength recognition to Pomona High School Musical Theater Summer Camp staff. The Board of Education is pleased to honor and recognize Pomona High School staff for the 2023 Pomona High School Musical Theater Camp Experience. And specifically, Mrs. Melissa Mills, also known as Millie, to those of us in the area. Okay, so Pomona High School 2023 Musical Theater Summer Camp Coordinator, Melissa Mills, is our next honoree this evening. Millie is currently a vocal music teacher at Pomona High School. Melissa, please make your way to the front of the room to receive our recognition. She is a true leader, always in the front. I know that. Pomona's High School Musical Theater Summer Camp was designed to teach fundamental performing arts skills to students in grades 3 through 9. The camp accumulates into a 30-minute musical put on for the community to enjoy. The Musical Theater Summer Camp provided a quality, I'm going to modify this little, 2 weeks of full-day, week-long camp experiences for 32 middle school students, and 1 full-day, week-long camp experience for 24 students, for a total of 56 students. It's a lot of time in the summer. And it's a very, really affordable program for our kids, too. Arts education is critical to the full development of children. The Musical Theater Summer Camp experience encourages self-confidence, creativity, compassion, and an appreciation for performing arts in our Jeffco students. Our vision in Jeffco is to be a thriving district where all students achieve their biggest dreams. The Musical Theater Summer Camp offers students the opportunity to follow their passions, grow their confidence, and engage with the community. Please join us in celebrating Melissa. Thank you for providing this unique and extraordinary experience to Jeffco students.
All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Director Parker.
For the next celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased, and I personally am thrilled, to acknowledge the contributions and partnership of UC Health and Children's Hospital in building a successful Project Search program for Our Communities, Our Legacy recognition. I invite our partners from Jeffco Transition Services, UC Health, and Children's Hospital to join us at the front of the room. We are honored to have with us tonight Stacy Whiteside from Children's Hospital Project Search Coordinator, Michelle Onstadt, Jeffco Transition Services Project Search Teacher, Jane Fuller, Jeffco Transition Services Project Search Paraeducator, Linda Carey, Project Search Job Coach, Stephanie Crookston, UC Health Project Search Coordinator, Sue Edwards, Jeffco Transition Services Project Search Teacher, Megan Quinn, Project Search Job Coach, and Jim Panzer, Colorado State Coordinator for Project Search. I've had the pleasure the last 2 years to be able to participate in the Transition Services graduation, and I'm telling you, there's nothing better, nothing better. Project Search is an innovative school-to-work transition program for high school students with significant disabilities. The program is dedicated to workforce development that benefits the individual, community, and workplace. Taking a holistic approach to working with young adults is the mission of Project Search. This includes highlighting strengths, identifying interests, overcoming barriers and challenges, and striving to obtain competitive employment that matches what works best for the young adult and their family. And just to say, most of our graduating students have no idea what they're going to be doing next, and these kids do know what they're doing. Both UC Health and Children's Hospital Colorado serve as host businesses, providing opportunities for students to learn workplace skills and emerge from the program ready for employment. UC Health's leadership and staff acknowledge the exceptional contribution these young adults make in over 100 participating hospital units across 3 participating UC Health hospitals. Project Search involvement has brought a new dimension to their mission of improving lives. Operating a successful Project Search program requires an employment rate of 75% or above. UC Health consistently places young adults in successful long-term jobs at a rate of 90% or greater since starting in 2017. The Project Search program at Children's Hospital Colorado has been recognized nationally as a recipient of several employment outcome awards, including a multiple achievements of the prestigious 100% Employment Award. Please join us in celebrating Children's Hospital and UC Health faculty, as well as Jeffco's Transition Services for their commitment to preparing Jeffco students for bright and successful futures.
As they're taking their photo, I will just reiterate or endorse what Director Parker said. If you want to feel your bucket, I'll fill it completely to the top. Go to a Jeffco Transition Services graduation. It is one of the more remarkable things that you can experience. Thank you all. All right, I get the honor and privilege of announcing our final recipient, and it's one that's close to my heart, so I'm very excited to be able to do it. For our final celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to acknowledge the contributions and partnership of the Red Rocks Community College Visual, Audio, and Media Arts Department for Our Communities, Our Legacy recognition. I would like to invite Dr. Michelle Haney, President of Red Rocks Community College, and Department Chair Paul Weinrock to please join us at the front of the room so that I can babble on about how phenomenal you all are and how much we think you're cool. Dr. Haney's like, I'm here for it, all of it. Yep. This past spring, Red Rocks Community College and Jeffco's War and Tech Graphic Design program joined together in artistic collaboration to uplift both the 16 welcoming and the 16 closing schools impacted by the Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools initiative. The collaboration resulted in a community mural designed around the word community, which you can see a smaller version of the banner that's now hosted at our 16 welcoming schools. I got off script and now, this happens to me all the time. To help students from both closing and welcoming schools feel a sense of belonging and unity. Each impacted school developed a process to solicit and select one piece of art from each grade level, kindergarten through 5th grade. The resulting banners were printed this summer at Warren Tech and displayed to welcome new students for the 23-24 school year. The mural, created from 200 submissions of student artwork that I know is still in Mr. Weinrock's office, showcases a diverse range of artistic expression, including paintings, drawings, sculptures, mixed media, and more. This collaborative project demonstrates the power of artistic expression in fostering a sense of belonging for students. The community mural serves as a visual representation of unity and support for both the closing and welcoming schools, helping students navigate the challenges of change and embracing the opportunities for growth and connection. Please join us in celebrating Michelle and Paul, as well as the Red Rocks faculty and students and Warren Tech staff members for their commitment to ensuring Jeffco students experience an environment of safety, belonging, respect, inclusivity, and encouragement.
music at the end of each one so that that moment is like a little, lively. Yeah, something.
Okay, thanks to everyone for being here and allowing us to celebrate you. We're going to move on to the next portion of our agenda. This is an opportunity in public comment for the community to share their thoughts with the board. The board will listen to public comment on any topic for up to 1 hour. If more time is required, we will host a second public comment at the end of the meeting. There's a 3-minute time limit per individual speaker. If there are 4 or more people who sign up to address the board, they will have 10 minutes for that group's view to be presented. Each speaker has been given a number, so the board will invite you to come up in the order that you're speaking. When the person before you completes their comments, you can step on up to the podium, and we'll have the massive clock right behind you. So whoever has the first number is welcome to come on up. No problem. Yep, you just come right over here, and you can, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. Hold on.
All right, can you see?
I gotta get set up. Hold on one second. I'm not quite ready. Hello, hello. My name's Kim Cameron, and address. I'm here to speak about the Phase 2 recommendation closure. And, all right, I'm gonna talk really, really fast. I'm gonna snap, not to be rude. She knows when to change the picture. Okay, here we go. Thank you to the board for this moment to talk about the Phase 2 recommendation. My name is Kim. Data from the 2020 census reveals that there are at least 317 school-age children within the canyon, a 50% increase in 2 decades. Despite this population growth, Jeffco enrollments have diminished by 20%, and a recent 45% decline is alarming given the looming threat of school closure. This situation calls for a deeper examination as it suggests an underlying cause for this decline unrelated to population or demographics, but rather connected to the management of the school by Jeffco. To put it simply, the canyon is thriving, with families and young children residing within or near our school boundaries. Instead of accepting the narrative that this is the smallest school and therefore unsustainable due to low enrollment, we should be asking, how can we transform Coal Creek Canyon into the premier choice destination for enrollment? A few ideas we haven't heard you mention yet. Embrace your acknowledgement that we are unique and invest adequately in our success. Exhibit a problem-solving spirit that recognizes proper funding boosts enrollments and retains families. Our annual school budget deficit is $300,000 to $500,000. This debt represents 0.16% of the $315 million Jeffco budget. What we are hearing is that it is impossible for the district to proactively allocate 0.16% of their budget to genuinely meet our needs and provide essential tax-paid support. How about reducing spending that is placing a strain on the management of our shrinking district, impeding your capacity to support smaller schools? For example, reviewing the departmental budgets for 23-24, there are notable increases, including 40% for the BoE, $452,000 to $635,000, a 160% increase for family school community partnerships of $1.8 million to $4.7 million, 29% for financial services, $5.5 million to $7.1 million, and 188% for strategy and communications, $1 million to $3.1 million. That's a lot of zeros for contingencies, office supply spending. You have 2 highest paid executives receive a salary that is 546% of your median income. Despite district population reductions of 10%, the salaries of your top 2 executives increased at a rate of 45% year over year. With shrinking population, closed facilities, and laws like Tabor, a 45% raise for 0.0001% of the organization raises legitimate concerns about equitable compensation and prudent fiscal management. Closing 15 elementary schools has yielded impressive results. On page 39 of the budget, it's stated that the efficiencies possible through this closure have generated $12 million in recurring operating savings, or approximately 60% of the total budgetary reductions for the district. Recent discussions indicate adopting Phase 2 would yield a savings of $15 million. I'm seeking clarification on how the closure of 3 schools is generating more savings than the $12 million achieved by closing 15 schools. Our principal has taken a part-time position to reallocate funds towards our school's needs. A 10% reduction in the salaries of the top 10 earners at Jeffco would amount to approximately $200,000, which is half of our budget. It may seem modest, but it signifies how a small change can make a monumental difference for generations to come. I have a couple more sentences if it's okay to finish. It may seem modest, but it signifies how a small change can make monumental difference for generations of children to come. Invest and reintroduce preschool. Preschool used to run from 1976 to 2005 with an average of 17 students in the last 6 years. Our neighborhood survey suggests potential enrollment of 20 to 21 students in the 2024-2025 year. The solutions are within our grasp. We have the potential to not only sustain the school, but transform it into a premier choice for enrollment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we'd welcome the next, number 2. Oh, that's you. Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you. Let me just get my notes organized. There we go. Would you like these both? Oh, thank you. So my name is Liz Vance, and my 7-year-old son is a second grader at Coal Creek Canyon K-8, and I'm the incoming SAC chair. So I think we learned a little bit, and I'm ready. Great. We learned a little bit about the marginal gain that we would get by the closure of my school, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the inequitable costs that will be borne by our students, our community, and our homeowners. The homeowners I'm going to start with because it has the most numbers. According to a peer-reviewed article, homes in neighborhoods that lose a school face a reduction in property values of about 7%. And according to local realtors, given how far we are from the nearest school, we should expect about a 25% reduction. The average home in Coal Creek Canyon is worth $645,000. And this means losing between $45,000 to $160,000 in property value per home. There are about 8,000 homes in the canyon. Closing our school would wipe out between $36 million and $1 billion in property values in our community, which could be devastating, much like a natural disaster. But far more importantly, I'd like to talk about the impact on our students. Closing our school would rip our students into multiple schools, many of which are over 35 minutes away for us Boulder and Gilpin families. My neighbor, her daughter goes to school in Boulder because that's where we're districted for. And I have yet to see my neighbor's daughter have any play dates at home. She hardly goes to any play dates. I know because she's at my house every day. And she's 2 years older than my son, and he's her best friend because he's her only friend that she knows in the canyon. I don't want this to happen to the 15 kids in my son's grade and the 85 kids that are going to the school today. What's more, when I think about the middle schoolers that regardless what happens with this charter option will be going to school down the canyon, we talk about having a more fulsome education experience. They won't get to go to extracurricular activities. They won't get to play soccer, do art, science, all the things that we do today in the canyon. They're going to be on the bus during that time. And finally, when you think about the community, this will tear our community apart. Someone said it might kill it. If you drive up the canyon, every single business in our canyon has a young child at CCC K-8, except for one. And if we close that school, families will flee the canyon. We'll become a collection of second homes for wealthy Denverites. Now, if the solution is instead of looking at the top-heavy administration in this district, and figuring out ways to cut costs in a way that means more than 0.16% of our district budget, but actually going with a charter, I'd like to take time to address their concerns. They're really concerned about the 6 to 8 closure, the timeline for responding, and the pressure to purchase a 10-acre property is making the charter option much less than viable. I'd like you to sit down with them and come up with a solution.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Ashley Allen. I'm a resident of Coal Creek Canyon. I am a parent of a student, and I'm here to talk about community. President Schooley, Directors Parker, Miller, Reed, and Varda. First, would like to extend my gratitude to you and acknowledge the commitment you do in volunteering for this. I've been asking myself recently, what is the moral obligation of a school? It is evident in the consideration of a charter for our school that We are inherently different, and we do not meet the status quo. This can also be seen in the Jefferson County Master Plan. In the section for the North Mountain areas, specifically cites Coal Creek Canyon. The section under Public Facilities, Services, and Utilities says this about Coal Creek Canyon. The perception of the quality of life in the community depends in part on the quality of the schools, fire, sheriff, and emergency services and utilities. These services should be compatible with this mountain environment, consistent, reliable, and adequate for the development it serves, and appropriate for the North Mountain areas, and should not be expected to duplicate the level of service found in urban areas. Additionally, it says that planning for school locations should reduce commuting time and distance. I read another quote that said, "Some people think that they are in community, but they are only in proximity. True community requires commitment and openness. It is a willingness to extend yourself, to encounter and know the other. CCC is a community because we extend ourselves to each other." I'm not just here for my son, who's in second grade, but I'm here for my community and for our quality of life. I'm here for the many women who own businesses in what we affectionately call downtown CCC. Amber, Sasha, Tina, Veronica. I'm here for Scott, who owns a business repairing driveways and also has a second grader at our school. I am here for and because of Clara, Ronnie, and Angie. 3 mothers who have willingly learned about type 1 diabetes so that my son, who has a lifelong chronic illness, can have play dates with his neighbors and be safe. I'm here for our Fire Chief Paul and our network of volunteer firefighters who risk their lives to protect us in time of need. They've been to my house in response to a 911 call where I was unconscious because of diabetic hypoglycemia. But most of all, I'm here for the people who moved to our canyon to raise a family in a small town, for those who will have to leave if we close the school, because proximity of people is not the same as community. It is of the utmost importance that factors such as community and moral obligation be prioritized in the process of school consolidation. I understand that it is counterintuitive for the board to ask Jeffco staff for a recommendation and then vote no. But I am asking you to vote no on the Phase 2 recommendation, because the cost of closing CCCK is not only a loss to our community, but of our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
That's a tough act to follow. All right, my name is Liz Ware. I'm a resident of Golden, and my children go to the Coal Creek Canyon K-8. I'm ready to start. I'm here to share my perspective and opinions with you regarding the problems and cause of the situation, in the hopes that you will not consider the closure of this school, and to help ensure that a sustainable solution is achieved, as the loss of this school will cause irreparable and inequitable economic and social harm to our community. I would also hope what you hear today will help you think about the future course of the Jeffco public education system. And I'm going to use language from the public school website to help with my message. Thank you for listening. So, listed under regional opportunities for thriving schools, the website says that, thank you, I appreciate you. The website says we need to efficiently utilize our resources to take advantage of economies at scale. Much like operating a mega farm at Tyson Foods or retail at Walmart, thriving businesses indeed. Live better, save money, it's what your family deserves. But excellence and values-based education and culture, I suppose it's subjective. Regarding needing to avoid creating inequities in educational opportunities due to budget limitations, closing a mountain school that was not given resources by the decisions here and that meets the needs of a community that would be disproportionately impacted by its closure, and having no school system and forcing students to travel significantly farther than other students in the district is an example of creating inequities due to budget limitations. So our school has been considered unsustainable because of loss of enrollment. Loss of enrollment has occurred due to fear of closing recently and lack of resources. The lack of resources is supposedly because the lack of funds, and that is something Jeffco Public School System has made happen. Closing the school might help to save less than 0.2% of the debt, which could also happen by cutting 0.2% of the top executive salaries. And yes, additional funds are needed for more resources, but maybe a few fractional percentage points as well. But in comparison to the financial harm caused by the community in the reduced home value, in the shifted demographics and impacts on our local businesses, those numbers will be significant and catastrophic to our community. I'll give you another analogy, or first one here. Okay, so a farmer has a horse and he is going to use this horse to do work on the farm, but he's not going to feed it because its food costs 0.2% of his monthly budget. So he has to put the horse down because it can't do work efficiently. Now, the farmer has made some pretty poor choices in his budget and in what he has planned for needing, but he is also making poor choices for the future of his farm. So if the focus is on students, then otherwise we have minimal impact on other schools, which is great, but the impact on our students is huge. We agree that not all students, staff, and families are starting from the same place or need the same things to reach their fullest potential, as the website says. Please don't force us to have to choose a one-size-fits-all overcrowded school in an entirely different community where we deserve choice and equitable resources for our families and our community. We'll play roles in supporting and showing up and paying taxes. We don't want our kids to need mental health and suicide services because they're on buses and swimming in seas of large schools. We need a sustainable regional opportunity for a thriving school for our families and the future families of the Canyon. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm ready. My name is Jessica Gregg. I'm a resident of Thornton Mountain, which is in Golden, and I'm here to also talk about the school closure of Coal Creek Canyon. Firstly, thank you very much to all of you for being here. Thank you very much to all of you who have come up to Coal Creek in the last 2 weeks twice. I know it's a bit of a trek, and I thank you guys for your time there. First and foremost, I am your DAC here, and I'm also the Rolston Valley Articulation Area Representative. I'm on the Budget Subcommittee and hopefully on the Charter School Subcommittee should we get a charter school. But most importantly right now, I am here as a parent. I have a mom of 2 little girls, one 6 and one 3. We live in Coal Creek Canyon, where I've lived for 23 years. In fact, my family has gone to Coal Creek Canyon since the 90s. And I just feel very strongly about Coal Creek Canyon in particular, and I'm also a part of the first graduating class, as is my husband of Rolston Valley. So first and foremost, I just want to say, I absolutely understand that you guys are under a lot of pressure, and this is difficult. I joined DAC for that very reason. I understand that having a budget it's definitely limited is hard, and you have to make hard decisions. And I see you guys having to make these hard decisions. I heard you, Superintendent Dorland, saying that this is a pit in your stomach and you don't like doing it. I hear you. I myself have to make very hard decisions at work all the time. But I really don't at all support this decision. I think kind of diminishing it and just saying this is a tough decision and the greater good needs to be considered here is not accurate. The other schools that closed had other neighborhood schools directly adjacent. There's not a huge change in the family dynamics or the community. Our school, you keep saying, is 15 minutes away from Three Creeks. I have to travel 15 minutes just to get to our school. So it's just like, most parents are traveling much more than that. Currently, the bus situation is such that I am having to do that. There's an incredible increase in commuting right now for my family. It's only going to get worse. We have to go to Three Creeks. Most importantly to me is Three Creeks is already overcrowded. There's 1,000 new homes being built. I know that the boundary study came out today. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to read it. I got it about 20 minutes before this meeting tonight. But I'm pretty right now alarmed about the fact and the lack of concern of our government officials right now. I've been calling Gilpin. I've been calling Boulder. I'm in Gilpin. I'm paying to Boulder schools, and I'm calling you guys, and you guys are the only ones responding right now, and I appreciate that. But this needs to be a collective government decision. I need help from the rest of the governments to come in and really work on this. Just sending out some emails to the charter schools and hoping that someone picks it up isn't enough. We are truly losing education. And I can't get a straight answer of what Gilpin and Boulder kids are going to have. You keep saying, okay, well, yeah, students who are currently impacted will definitely have a spot at Three Creeks. What about my daughter who's 3? What about our future community who has any future kids coming in? We asked some very basic questions on Tuesday about what happens with middle schoolers once we get through maybe a charter school K through 5. And not one person could answer whether our kids will have middle school. All right, we don't have middle school. We don't have high school. We don't have a school within 45 minutes of my home in any direction. You guys need to come up with better answers. This is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Erin DeCesseris, and I'm a parent here in Jeffco. I'm also a volunteer with Moms Demand Action. I spoke previously during the June board meeting, asking for your support of common sense gun safety tactics in our Jeffco schools. As you know, this week is National Suicide Prevention Week. In Colorado, suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24, and 50% of all suicides were by firearm. Data has shown us that having access to a firearm triples one's risk of death by suicide. Research tells us secure storage practices play a vital role in reducing the risk of suicide by firearm and all gun violence. And in Jeffco, we can do more to educate and aid parents on safe gun storage and preventing unauthorized access to personal firearms. We know you're already making progress on this by reviewing Dr. Glass's recommendations from the School Safety Task Force. We appreciate those efforts, and in addition to this, we're asking you to consider the following actions. Disseminate information about safe gun storage to all parents. Require parents to acknowledge Colorado's safe storage law, which requires guns to be safely secured or face a misdemeanor upon annual school registration. Provide gun locks at schools, and finally convene a new school safety committee at the district level. We wouldn't be alone in implementing these types of measures. Some of our neighboring districts in Denver, Cherry Creek, and Boulder Valley have already undertaken similar actions. I know this isn't an easy topic to discuss, but the reality is that this affects our children, our schools, and all of us. Students today have enough to worry about. Gun violence at their school isn't something they should need to worry about. And as the adults in their lives, it's our responsibility to do whatever we can to ensure they feel safe at school and at home. Thank you for taking the time to consider these actions.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Dr. Kevin Brainy. If you're having a heart attack, don't call me. I'm an academic doctorate. My doctorate's in leadership and innovation. I am here tonight to speak about my experience with the culture of 3 schools here in Jefferson County Public Schools and offer 3 very simple solutions that I would like you to consider. I have a child at Van Arsdale Elementary School who is neurodivergent and I have 2 children who graduated from Ralston Valley High School who are doing fabulous in their collegiate careers right now. So they've had wonderful coaches and teachers and principals. I'd like to offer too, just for by way of context, a little bit about my background and probably the root of my comments. I'm also a former high school principal. I was principal of Boulder High School, principal of Westminster High School, and director of employee training and education for Mental Health Partners, which is your sister agency to JCMH. So that's my background. I was also the incident commander for the shooting that occurred in Boulder a few years ago. We coordinated the trauma response for that. And I'm also a certified mental health first aid, QPR, and psychological first aid trainer. And I'm also a survivor of my own suicide attempt. Culture gives life to organizations. Cultures drive success and outcomes, not policies, not procedures, and not tactics. I am asking of the board and the superintendent with these simple 3 suggestions to consider how you can do some work to bring your great intentions, fabulous policies and statements around belonging and recognizing excellent groups that do lots of great work for kids, to bring that down to the nuts and bolts blocking and tackling level. This year, let me go back real quick, and with my time, I'm going to go very fast. Ralston Valley High School had a fabulous senior award ceremony last year. My daughter was there and honored. It was awesome. I would encourage the board, however, to monitor and propose potential policies for when non-district personnel and school staff speak. There were 3 scholarships that were awarded, well-deserved and fabulous scholarships. The presentation of those scholarships, as someone with a trauma background in education, was concerning in that the non-district staff shared extensive details about what happened to their loss. It was awful. Grief and trauma that needed to be expressed. I'm just questioning the setting at which it was expressed and would encourage all of you to support your building principals, understand how and when to incorporate trauma into official settings like that. The second thing I wanted to offer is to monitor the time and place in which new principals and their teachers leave buildings in the start of the school year. My son has had a very difficult transition into his elementary school, partly, of course, because of his issues that we are working on, but they certainly would have been supported had the teachers been there and able to respond to the crisis that he experienced, rather than a support staff member who was awesome and did the best that she could, but she wasn't the right person to respond. And the last thing that I'll say to you is, our reason for moving from Meiklejohn to Van Arsdale probably is warrant more conversation. It was a horrific experience. My son ended up at Children's Hospital at 6 years old, thinking about suicide and self-harm, directly related to shame and bullying and the treatment that he experienced by staff there. I believe that that was not intended on their part at all. They just need more training and more support. I would just encourage all of you to mandate training for your principals and building leaders at that level around how to communicate with people in crisis, how to work on destigmatizing their communication and recognizing that suicide is driven by shame, hopelessness, and helplessness. So when we shame students who are already at risk, we're adding to the risk factors that they may in the end take their life. It's a simple change, and it can be fixed with training. And thank you so much for your time, and I apologize for going over. Wish you the best of luck with all the topics you have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, there's none. Hi, welcome.
Hello, my name is Joe. I'm a resident of Arvada, and I will be talking about social emotional learning and corruption in the teachers union. Hello, my name is Joe, and I'm representing the Colorado chapter of the LGBT nonprofit organization Gays Against Groomers. I live here in Jefferson County with my husband and our son, and as such, I'm speaking with authority as both a parent and a member of the LGBT community. I'm here today because Jeffco Public Schools continues to show up in the media. In case you haven't been paying attention, I'll give you a quick recap. Last week, an email circulated to Jeffco teachers from their union instructing them to collect and then destroy evidence of pronouns of students. Not only is this a violation of the 14th Amendment, but places our severe distrust in our children's educators. While this and previous administrations are so concerned with pronouns and jamming a radical sexual agenda down the throats of our children, you are failing them to be self-sustaining adults. Or did you forget that 61% of Jeffco students are not proficient in math, science, and or English based on the 2023 CMAS scores? We don't know if this is misguided ignorance or bad actors, but I'm here to tell you to stop. We do not condone minors being forcibly exposed in Colorado schools to gender ideology lessons from their teachers and school officials. The studies used to support this radical agenda by this and previous administrations has been consistently disproven around the world by actual doctors and scientists who are experts in endocrinology, gender identity, child psychology, and pediatric care. But since you ignore science and are only swooned by manipulative emotional claims, I'm here to plead with you. As a gay parent, you are setting back our rights. We beg of you to focus on STEM and put an end to gender ideology lessons, talks, medication support within schools, and support purposely hiding all of this from parents. You might think you're being an ally by being inclusive, but I can assure you your efforts will end up with more blood on your hands. It is a fact that minors who identify as transgender and complete sexual reassignment surgery have a 20% higher chance of committing suicide over peers who do not. Why in God's name would you allow this type of curriculum to be in the schools, knowing the harm and confusion it causes? These kids can barely read. But sure, continue to indoctrinate children with your misguided viewpoints of sex. Watch as unenrollments continue to skyrocket, forcing you to close and consolidate even more schools. 16, 17. This has to stop because it is the parents that have lost all faith and trust in your ability to set up our children for success. And if my pleas as a parent and a member of the LGBT community have struck a chord with you, we invite you to visit radar.gaysagainstgroomers.com to review hundreds of scientific and medical studies which will confirm the lies you've been fed under the community umbrella. It isn't hard to succeed. Stop grooming our children and focus on STEM. Thank you for your time. And also, please don't close their school. Three Creeks is way overcrowded.
All right, thanks. All right, we're going to move on to our study session. So our first topic of discussion this evening is a status update on the district's property disposition process from our Jeffco partners at Jones Lang LaSalle Education Real Estate Solution and CRL Public Affairs Professionals. I'm going to just talk really slowly so we give them all time to approach the front of the room. And welcome to our guests. All right, so before I hand this over to Mr. Gatlin, Chief Operating Officer, is there anything that you would like to open us up with, Superintendent Dorlin?
I just want to welcome our guests and thank you for being here. And Mr. Gatlin, I'm going to hand it to you so you can do some introductions and get us started. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. I'm here joined by Brian Carroll with JLL and Roger Sherman from CRL, who we were in front of you previously at the June 22nd board meeting, I believe. And we wanted to provide an update to the board about the property disposition process and provide an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who will go through an update and transition to Roger partway through, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. Thanks, everybody. It's probably better. So we're going to take you through what work has been done since we last met. We'll take you through a quick update on the timeline for getting the first two properties out to market. And then Roger will take you through a community engagement update, and then we'll talk about what is yet to come. So this is a relatively complicated process, as you will see a couple slides later when we have a Gantt chart. So that process has been filled out. We've got now we've got dates for all of those things. We've got all the steps and kind of agreed on all of that process. So that took a little bit of time, got that worked out. We've done board dates and community meetings and all those sorts of things. So that's done. We've had some meetings and we've had lots of conversations with a myriad of folks who have reached out about interest in some of these locations. So we've kind of fielded those, organized them, had any conversations that we need to kind of prep for the process, and have stored that information away so that when the process does start, we can reach back out and say, okay, now here's kind of how you navigate this. We've got pre-qualification documents, which I think you guys have seen in draft. Those will go public as soon as this is all approved. So that will be made available to anybody who wants to see it and who is interested in this process. From those pre-qualification documents, we do these very short marketing documents that we, can attach to emails, and so that, you don't have to read whatever 12, 15 pages of content to get the gist of what's happening. And then we've also made some, looked through your portfolio of assets and made some recommendations on unimproved land, I would say, that you could theoretically look at disposing of in that process. So you've seen this, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. The complicated snake chart of process, but you can see there's when you navigate a process like this, it's very complicated, particularly when you start to engage with, as many stakeholders as there are in this process. So we've got board, we've got community, we've got staff, we've got potential buyers, community members, all of those sorts of folks. So it starts to become a relatively complicated process, and apologize for the complicated graphic, but you guys have all seen this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. What we did then was we put dates to this. So how long do we want to do various activities here? So the first thing, we've talked a little bit about this, but the pre-qualification process, there's a number of kind of subtasks within that. So we do site tours, we do question and answer periods, we close the process. So at some point you've got to say, okay, if you've got an offer, give us that, give us your qualification, so to speak. We have a review process, we do interviews, evaluations, and then we move on to a call for offers process for anybody who's made it through that pre-qualification process. Very similar, we've got a question and answer period, and then those offers are due. And then there's the navigation of, recommendation and going to the advisory committees and the cabinet and board, et cetera, et cetera. So these are specific amounts of time that would be allocated to all of those processes. This can be scaled to, we like to scale this within like holidays and board dates and so those sorts of things. So this is what we would recommend is kind of a minimum allotted time for these tasks. But I think the first one we did Allendale and Zerger, the first thing we did was look at, okay, well, the end of the year, nobody's really going to be working on this. They're going to want a little bit of extra time. So we kind of scale it to fit the needs of people who would be looking at this. So if there's any question on that, we can obviously take it later, but that's kind of the overall process and sort of how long those steps take.
So real quickly, to layer on what Brian has said already, we have met and continue to meet and update mayors, city managers, and stakeholders that are interested in the process. I think as we've gotten geared up, it's taken a little longer than anticipated. So this quiet period, we have to keep them informed and let people know that indeed work is being done, and we'll be starting the solicitation process soon. We reopened, because there had been such a long period of time, reopened the ad hoc member selection and application process just for 3 weeks to allow folks that might have not heard about it originally and thought it was already over and we were into that work, an opportunity to apply. We've actually had one additional application just this last week. And we have continued to meet with the Property Distribution Advisory Committee, the last meeting on the 28th. We've got our next meeting scheduled for the 25th of September. That meeting will be dedicated to reviewing applications from folks in the community that are interested in serving as an ad hoc committee member for both Allendale and Zerger. We'll make those selections. We do have the appointments from both Westminster and Arvada for their ad hoc committee members. And then in October, we'll convene the entire group, do a level set, get people talking about how they're going to review the pre-qualification recommendations and kind of move forward through the process. So that, I think, is it.
And then lastly, next steps here. So we have provided the first pre-qualification document, so we've already gotten some feedback on that. Last step is just any final feedback, wrap that into the document, and then finalize it. Once we get approval to market those, the The last thing we do is we update the dates. You can imagine that as everything has a very specific amount of time, if we release on September 17th, it's different than September 21st, right? So we've got to update those dates. It's the last thing we do. And then once we get that updated, then we carry out the advertising process.
Great. Thanks so much. Anything else, Mr. Gatlin? I didn't want to cut you off if you were about to reach for your mic.
Nope. Just wanted to provide an opportunity for any questions.
Great.
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much. Board members, questions, comments? Yep. Director Parker.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I'm just wondering and thinking that as we go through the process with these first two schools, that we will learn a lot about it, and also that sometimes it'll be the same city officials that we'll deal with in the future. So you will get a really good feel this go round for their hopes and desires and whatever for their districts. So do you anticipate going forward we'll see this timeline of 179 days go down a lot?
I would say generally not. Much of the time is for folks who are interested in these opportunities to put their bid together. Part of designing a program like this is to make sure that it's inclusive rather than exclusive. And when we shrink that timeline, it makes it more difficult for folks to respond. I would expect the particular dates, if anything, to be right around there, if not go up a little bit, just based on holidays, busy seasons, those sorts of things. But that generally is the time allocation that I would recommend for most of these.
Director Miller.
If people are interested in the ad hoc application, where would they find it then?
Yep, it's on the website under the property disposition process.
Okay.
The only applications that are open now are for Zerga and Allendale. And then
Okay.
as we move forward, we'll open up applications by school that we're working on.
Okay. And people in the neighborhoods know about this because they came to the community meetings and things like that.
And we've sent a reminder to anyone that signed up for those particular schools announcing that the application had been reopened. So,
And if people had not been at that meeting and they didn't sign up, they could still apply?
yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Dr. Barta.
What's the selection criteria for being accepted onto the advisory committee?
That's a question I wasn't prepared to answer. The committee has had initial discussions, and we've come up with some broad, kind of themes. And then I think the plan is to look at qualifications and background, and look where we might have a hole, because the person that Arvada submitted may have certain qualifications and background and expertise may be very different from Westminster. So there's a little bit of flexibility, like, oh, we really need, this person has X expertise. That really is something that maybe we have a little bit of a hole in and a need in. So it's a little flexible, but there's some basic criteria, but I didn't bring it with me.
It sounds like you're thinking it's skill-based, is what that sounded like to me, but are we also thinking about representation of different types of people and different perspectives?
We wanted to reflect. I mean, there was a certain things that, they answered questions about. What is their connection to that school? Why are they interested? What would they like to contribute? So we'll be looking at the depth and thought process of those answers. But our goal is, we've got kind of the set members that I think are representing the district. We're really looking for people that can demonstrate they're representing the community around the schools.
I think one reason I was really thinking a lot about that is because we know that some of the decisions could be really contentious about who we're accepting in terms of just developers and things like that. So I just want to make sure that our committee is a range of people who will represent, if it's private sector and, dollar interests, and also community culture and things like that.
My guess is most of these appointments will be more on the latter, the community culture and connection to the community. And there is a conflict of interest kind of agreement that we've created, so no one can be related to anyone that may be thinking about proposing and things like that.
Any other questions or comments? I just have one. It's really around this outreach to city managers, mayors, other electeds on city council. I'm curious if you can talk about one of the things that I hope folks were hearing and that I heard loud and clear. There's in that snake of a process, there is a significant role that city council members and city managers and mayors play in the success or not of the property disposition process. And so I'm curious, is in your conversations, if there are certain themes or concerns, questions, what you're hearing, just so that we can be aware of some of the tenor of those conversations.
Sure. I mean, initially, the jurisdictions were like, let's make sure everyone understands this is Jeffco's process, right? And then as you get into it, you start to layer our timeline over, okay, there's an entire redevelopment process within each jurisdiction. The jurisdictions are different. So they have come along as far as lots of more communication. JLL has had individual conversations with planning directors. We're trying to really understand how the property is zoned, what are possible, what's the process that we can communicate that out. So I feel like there's a really good partnership. These two schools so far have not had a lot of controversy around, but we don't have any proposals yet. So there are some other schools coming down the pike that there are more active community members, and I think that may change how these cities respond. But I think the key is we've tried to, and one thing I loop back after our community meetings, and I said, well, what didn't we say right about that relationship between our process and the city process, going to that idea of trying to learn from these early schools so that we get that communication better as we're trying to tell the public, how they really are going to be engaged and who makes decisions about what, because there's a lot of confusion.
Sure, yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think it's a conversation we'll just continue having because it's a pretty complicated series of processes that we're trying to sort of slot one kind of understandable snaky thing that you've created. Yeah, Dr. Varda.
I just had a question on the timeline. Is this 179 days, that's all before it goes to the city, like the city council? So it's 179 days, and when we have our executive session, we're not making a decision, or are we saying, because we don't make a decision on it until after it goes through the whole city council process, right? Or this.
Essentially what would occur is you would be making a decision on who is going to be the buyer of the property. The buyer
That's what this is? This
yes.
That executive session, or
correct.
Whatever the vote, there's a vote there.
Correct. The buyer of the property, they need to demonstrate that they have control and there's some contracts there and that they've done work to gain control of the property before they can go to the city. So at that point, then they start to go through the city's process. If there is a re-entitlement or if there's any of that kind of work that needs to be done with the city, it starts once you've made that selection.
And then does it come back to us, or is that our vote? After the city goes through it, does it come back to us? Or are we done?
At that point, you'd be approving the contract to be signed, a purchase and sale agreement to be signed. So it wouldn't come back to the board as it's been designed.
But it may not close
right
until after it goes through process with the city, and there'll be timelines identified within the contract, I assume?
Correct. Yep. And there's deposits, and those deposits are refundable for periods of time and not refundable. It's a relatively, again, keep using this, it's complicated to get through that. But and unfortunately, it's a difficult process to lay out for a year because we don't know. I mean, the more controversial the proposal, the more time it takes to get through that, and vice versa. So it's very difficult to say it will take 9 months to get through that process because every municipality is different, every proposal is different, every person who navigates that process is different. So
we may vote yes on this, and then the city council votes no.
Yeah.
Director Reed, did you have a comment or question you wanted to put out there? I just saw your hand.
So, well, you almost clarified what I needed because I was wondering, so we've said theoretically, yes, we're willing to go through with this sale at the executive session. Then they go to the city and the city says no. Then do we go to the next choice that we would have made, or do we open the whole thing back up again? I'm unclear about how our decision is impacted by the decisions of the municipalities.
So the question of whether or not you go back through the process is a decision that you can make at that time. A lot of times you'll move on to the next proposal that works for you and allow them an opportunity to try that entitlement process. Typically, you would not go through all the way through a very long and lengthy entitlement process and then just fail out of the blue. They would be working with staff and meeting with those folks up front and sort of understanding what they can get through. And that process, if they're going to fail, is typically quicker than if they're going to succeed and they have to dot all their I's and cross all their T's and do all those sorts of things. So that's a long-winded way to say you will have the option at that point.
Do you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I was only going to add that, we said that
Really good with
their
cues.
process starts, when our process ends, but there is some overlap. Westminster has said it may be 12 months to do a project. But, 2 or 3 of their first steps are all these pre-meetings that they're having with people, pre-proposal meetings. And so I would expect that our proposers are having those kind of as they're doing their due diligence before they even make a submittal. So, there is work that's kind of overlapped. That's part of why it's so hard to explain to the community how all that interplays.
Be possible then before then that the board get to meet with the city council to talk about it before we even vote? Is that not
To talk with the city council about
the
the
proposals
proposal
that are in front of us so that we have a sense of, I can call my city council members, but I was wondering if the board can have conversations with the municipalities to just avoid the unknowns. Yeah.
So one of the challenges with that, if a developer is moving forward with a proposal that's going to require a rezoning, then the council becomes kind of locked into quasi-judicial rules. So all these discussions are happening at the staff level because then the council has to vote on it as if they're the judge, and they're not allowed to have conversations about those in advance. So it's really hard. This is all really planning department level discussions. Is this fit our comp plan? Is it something that, based on their interaction with council may be open to? What's the community thinking on this? So that's the kind of conversations that are happening.
So this is where the board will rely on me, Jeff, John, Roger, other people to stay connected with city managers, city planners, and help to advise you all on what's going on in terms of this proposal, this proposal's collaboration so far with the city and what we know, and that it's just going to be one step at a time,
Other comments, questions at this moment? We'll be talking about this for a little while, so welcome to the party. But all right, for right now, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you. Board members, would you like to take a break or roll? Great. We're going to take a 5-minute break and we can get the next group set up, and then we'll come back, well, like I said, in 5 minutes. Thank you. Great. Welcome back, everyone. Our next topic of discussion this evening is an update on the district's current boundary study. As a reminder to the board and our listening public, the board charged Superintendent Dorland and her staff with initiating a comprehensive study of the district's current school boundaries, articulation patterns, and enrollment patterns to inform a path forward that is in the best interests of our students and community. Before I hand this over to Ms. Relu, Chief Communication and Strategy Officer, is there anything you would like to add, Superintendent Dorland?
No, I'm good. Ms. Relu.
Take it away.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to have some very smart guests with me tonight. I'm excited to be leading this project, but the brain trust on this is with my team, Ty Young and Claire Takar. They're really very ingrained on this project, meeting with our friends from Flow every week and really keeping this work moving along. And so from Flow Analytics, we have Kate Dorian. I'm going to say that incorrectly. Sorry, Kate. And then Rebecca Wright.
Okay.
And then I also have Colleen here with us from GBSM. And so this boundary study is sort of two parts. Flow Analytics is helping us with the quantitative analysis, and GBSM is helping us with the qualitative analysis. And so we have our first report on the quantitative work. It's the first part of several parts, which I hope for both our board and our listening public lays a good foundation on some of the things that we've really been talking about for the last year about patterns and trends in enrollment. But it also, I think, fills in some gaps some of us might have had about what the changes and boundaries that have happened over years, maybe before some of us were in our positions or on the board, and so that has been helpful to understand as well. So I'm going to hand this over to our friends at Flow, who are going to take you through the presentation and answer your questions tonight. So with that, I hand it over to you all.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, as Lisa mentioned, we are Flow Analytics and GBSM, and we are very privileged to be working with Jefferson County Public Schools on this very important work. So during this presentation, we're going to provide an overview of the project itself and what's involved. We'll talk about the initial analysis that we've completed and the results of those analysis, and then we'll talk through the community engagement plan. So to begin with, we just want to introduce ourselves. So Flow Analytics, we are a GIS consulting firm, and we are based around the country. So we work with school districts across the nation on projects such as student enrollment forecasting, boundary analysis, program analysis, school choice analysis. And we really are, throughout all those projects, really focused on equity. So ensuring that all students have access to the educational opportunities that best meet their individual needs. And that's one of the reasons why we especially love working with Jeffco, because you all are so equity focused, and that really lends itself to the work that we do. We are experienced. We have demographers and GIS analysts and technicians that have decades of experience. We also employ former education leaders, both at the state and school district level. So we've walked in your shoes. We understand what this is like, and we are excited to be able to communicate that very technical information in hopefully an easy to understand and digest way. We really focus on innovation, and we're going to talk through some of those pieces when Kate presents the results of our initial analysis, but we really want to tailor this project to your individual needs as a district and as a community. And of course, we are number one committed to community. So we do this work because at the end of the day, it's helping out students, just like you all. That's our primary focus. And so we hope that the results of this work will be able to really impact the lives of students in your community.
Hey, Rebecca,
if we could have the...
Would you mind?
Go ahead.
Would you mind advancing the slides, or do you want us to advance them on our end?
Oh, I'm advancing them. Are you not able to see?
Yeah, we're not seeing an advancement.
Okay.
It looks like the full screen didn't pick up on the right screen, maybe.
Let me try resharing it, and we will.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Can you guys see the second slide?
Yep.
Okay, this is actually the third slide, so I won't repeat everything I just said, but there is a slide that talks about what I just went through, and I apologize for that, but I'm glad it's working now. And let me know if it doesn't advance after this one. But
yeah, I can chime in.
So the purpose of this project, as Lisa mentioned, is that you all have been experiencing a lot of demographic shifts, especially in terms of declining enrollment. And that has been a result of birth rates slowing down. And that is something that we are seeing in school districts across the country. So it's not unique to Jeffco. It's actually pretty much a national phenomenon in the last several years. And there's also the concern about the affordability and availability of housing that is leading to fewer families that have school-age children in the district. So as these populations have changed, that's resulted in lower student enrollment. And as a result of that, some of the school districts schools within the district have become significantly under-enrolled and the buildings underutilized, which means the district is providing funding for buildings and maintenance and upkeep that could potentially be used to provide better supports to students. So it's something that we are looking at as part of a comprehensive study, both of the district's current school boundaries, but also students' articulation patterns and enrollment patterns. And so that's when we start to look at things like where parents are choosing to send their children to school, what programming is really important for students, and how that's impacting enrollment at the schools, both the neighborhood schools that students are zoned for and the schools that they choose to attend. So what that looks like in terms of the actual project tasks. So for the last 5 months, we have been focusing on the enrollment trends, boundary alignment, and enrollment analysis, and that is going to be what Kate is going to talk through in a minute. We have also been conducting a school choice analysis. So again, figuring out where parents are sending their children to school, what schools are retaining students at what levels, and where there are other enrollment trends in terms of choice. And so we hope to be able to finish that analysis in the next month. We also are working on an current enrollment and enrollment projections analysis, which will also be done at the end of this month, along with a school program analysis. So looking at how students access their programming and whether there are areas where there is an oversaturation of programming or where there might be areas where there are not enough programs to meet students' needs. So we have a lot of additional 3 more reports that are going to be coming to the district within the next month. And all of those pieces are feeding into the boundary scenario work that we are starting, and we plan to continue through the end of May of 2024. And so again, with boundary scenario modeling, we're going to be integrating things like school capacity analysis, trends analysis, school program analysis, and the school choice patterns, all to make sure that this is a very robust and informed process. And along with that, in order to ensure, as Lisa mentioned, that we are getting the qualitative side, we have an excellent partnership with GBSM, and Colleen is here, and she is going to be talking with you all about how we're going to be getting community and parent input to help inform the boundary modeling process and school choice and school program analysis as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kate.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to walk through the analysis that we did, the first of many that are coming up, but this one is done. So we're going to walk you through some of the key points of the analysis. There are more points that were made, more things that were analyzed as a part of the whole analysis, but these are kind of the key takeaways from the analysis, and I'll show a couple of graphs and tables that are also included in our report. So the enrollment analysis, we started in the spring. It's enrollment trends and boundary alignment assessment. So we're looking at historical student enrollment, demographic characteristics, residential development, prior changes to school boundaries, and articulation areas. So the results of this is kind of providing the groundwork for an historical understanding of enrollment trends, what's been going on at the district to date. And then going forward, we will have further reports that are looking at what's going on now, what's projected to happen in the future. But this is kind of a look back at the last 10 years. Serves as a foundation for these future analyses. We're already using some of this information in the reports that are coming out soon, and identifying potential boundary changes as well. So these are the key points. One of them is probably not a surprise to anyone in the room, but enrollment has declined since the 2013-14 school year. So this table that your eyes kind of drawn to, the dark green is the highest enrollment for a particular articulation area for any of the last 10 years. So if you look at Alameda, the highest enrollment for that articulation area was in 2013. That's the dark green. And then the lowest is the light blue. So you can see just an overall pattern of declining enrollment almost across almost every articulation area except for Ralston Valley. But you've got this kind of maybe not declining in a linear way, but definitely declining up to the pandemic and beyond. So enrollments declined by 10.4% in the last 10 years, with enrollment kind of peaking between that 2015, continuing to 2020 or 2019 and then dropping off. Enrollment declines have occurred through nearly all of the 17 articulation areas, and student density is another factor that we look at. And so that's also declined kind of across the whole district, almost as a function of the population going down as well. So enrollment declines are mainly due to population loss. So I kind of alluded to that a second ago, but the decline in school age population. So in the table, you'll see school age population for 2009-10 was 89,371. 2019-20, 85,751. So you've got that school age population difference between the two decades, 4.1% change. That decline just in the school age population alone was greater than the decline in enrollment in the district over that time period, suggesting that membership decline was attributable to population loss and not just to enrollment in other schools. And then a high percentage of Jefferson County children enrolled in K-12 schools attended public schools, according to the most recent American Community Survey data. So we're also seeing smaller families and fewer families. So Jeffco, the school district, had a 33% increase in the number of households without children in 2020 compared to 2000. So significant change in household composition. So you're seeing an increase in population over time, yes, but almost staying steady and going down a little bit, kind of over time in the school age population means that percentage overall of the population is going down over time. And development is generally decreasing as well, but there are some larger planned developments that could in fact affect enrollment in particular areas in the future, could affect particular schools or particular articulation areas, but we're not seeing development, occurring in high levels across the whole district. One of the main things that we're seeing is lower birth rates. So between 2000 and 2020, total fertility rates, so the number of children that would be expected to be born to a woman over her childbearing years, so kind of fertility as a measure in Jefferson County declined from 1.1 to 1.91, so that's 1.91 children, which is weird, but it's an average, to 1.36. And then we're also lower than the national average for the same time period, but which is also declining. This graph is really interesting because you can see in 2000, this is how many births per 1,000 women were occurring in Jefferson County in 2000. So that's the dark blue line, the one that kind of is at the top, the high. The light blue line, the one that's kind of in the middle there, you can see that ages 20 to 24, 25 to 29, the number of births per 1,000 women are dropping. And then in 2020, even further. So you've got the line at the bottom, which shows the births per 1,000 women for those two kind of age groups are really declining, where it's not as pronounced in the other kind of age groups, 30 to 34 up to 40 to 44, not as much of a decline. So it's really happening in the 20 to 30 kind of age range. We also did a big study to look at boundary changes. So we have all of these school boundary data for the last 10 years, and we intersected all of them and looked at everywhere that any boundaries changed over the past 10 years. And we compared that to school utilization. So if you change a boundary with hopefully, wanting to balance enrollment between two schools, or a new school has kind of come on board and you want to make sure that there's students that are zoned for that school, you would expect that the kind of enrollment balance that you're getting similar utilizations across the schools, in that area as a result of making these changes. So we wanted to know if that was true or not. So we had all of these boundary changes, and in about half the cases, changing a boundary had the desired effect of either bringing in enrollment or reducing enrollment at that school. The ones that are unclear is because, potentially two or more schools kind of swapped boundaries between them. So then it's hard to tell what the effect would be there. But we did see, that even 1 or 2 years out was kind of where we saw utilization and enrollment just really balancing between the schools. And then, following those 2 years, it kind of becoming less balanced over time. There were a high number of boundary changes that took effect in 2017 and 2018 that did have the largest effect that we could find. And that was a result of, and we've got a lot of changes that happened during that time period. So Pleasant View closed, Rosestein reopened, Three Creeks opened. So there was a lot of, for Three Creeks especially, a lot of elementary school and middle school boundary changes all happening at the same year. So there were a lot of boundary changes in that year, and it did have kind of a couple years later an effect of balancing enrollment between the schools. So changing boundaries does tend to have an effect, but not always, which just shows us that there's other things that are, there's other factors that, bring students to a school, like programs or proximity or things like that. And I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Thank you. So we just wanted to reiterate what the plan was based on what Kate just went through. So she just talked through that first piece, and she alluded to some of the pieces that we're currently doing with the school choice analysis, the current enrollment and enrollment projections analysis, which is different from the current student enrollment analysis. So that's really allowing us to dig into where students are at currently attending and where they're projected over the next 10 years to be attending and how that affects school capacities, as well as the school program analysis. And then we're going to be really digging in deeply into the boundary scenario modeling work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pauline to talk about community engagement.
Thanks, Rebecca. So as you can see in the project timeline, we are kicking off the public engagement period of the boundary study. And that's really intentional as these initial quantitative analyses come to an end, but also as kids and families return to school. So welcome back to school, and we're excited to get the engagement kicked off. Our goal really is to, first and foremost, to make sure that parents, families, students, and the community are engaged, that they are understanding and informed of what the boundary study is, the purpose of it, and the ways that they can be involved. And we really see this to happen in two phases. First and foremost, as you can see on the screen, this phase one will happen to get a district-wide perspective on why families are choosing the schools that they are. So obviously the quantitative data can tell us a lot, but that doesn't necessarily capture all of the reasons why parents are making the decisions that they are. So we'll be starting with the survey to understand what are the factors that are contributing to school enrollment decisions, and ultimately how is school programming specifically playing into that. So what is both in the K through 8, but also in the high school space, what are the specific types of programs that are most important to parents? In phase two, which we imagine will start in the beginning of next school year, this will be our opportunity to really dig deeper into, as those recommendations are made, qualitative focus groups, community workshops, which will be determined based on the initial findings from those quantitative analyses and the survey. And I think that with that,
we'd like it to open it to the board for questions. Thank you, President Schooley.
Great. Thank you all, and thanks for joining us via Zoom or whatever platform we're using. Thanks for being here. Board members, opportunity for questions. Yes, start us off, Director Reed.
I'm curious how we're doing outreach for the surveys in surveying families so that we get not only information about how they choice within our district schools, but why people are choosing, say, a private education or a charter school education.
So I would say that we are starting initially with our with the families that are in Jeffco. So since the boundary study really finds that we aren't losing a lot of students outside of the system of Jeffco, including our charters, we're going to focus on the students in Jeffco, number one. But I do think that as we're going to gather some initial information, and we're working with the comms team on how to get that out. We're working on strategies on how to reach our charter school families as well as our Jeffco traditional school families, and then also working with our family engagement liaisons to make sure that folks who don't typically answer surveys can give feedback in other ways. So we will be working really hard to get as many and as the most diverse responses to the survey as possible. And there may be areas of focus, for example, transition years. So as we think about families that might be making decisions between 5th and 6th grade, for example, we might be asking our families about, as they think about the next step in their child's education, what are they considering? And so that will hopefully help us understand why one program or one type of school might be more attractive to them than others. It's helpful.
Other questions? Yep, Dr. Varda.
Colleen, on the questions about why people choice in, and we hear a lot is, what programs are folks offering and things like that. I was wondering how we're capturing, I've been thinking a lot about our Arvada K-8 community. We have a lot of folks who choice in there, and a lot of them are Spanish speaking or coming from other areas, maybe immigrant families. And I keep wondering, what is it about Arvada K-8? I don't know if it's the programming, but they've also been struggling a little bit in some areas. So I keep wondering what is it that is bringing all those families there that they're not getting or they don't see at other schools? And I have a wonder if it's a cultural connection and a sense of belonging in that community. And so, if we said, do you want the best arts program, that might not capture it. So, how are we asking those questions?
Sure, yes, and I'm actually going to bring up, just for my reference. So one of the, in addition to the programming, we will have other categories that we're looking into and really kind of digging into what are the specific factors within that. So we have school design and programming is one category, logistics, so things like transportation time, proximity to home, school climate, so elements of diversity of students, welcoming environment, feelings of connection and belonging. So those are included there. And then also school reputation. So looking at things like academics, school accolades or awards, word of mouth reputation. We are really trying to hone in on beyond those big categories that we know in terms of things that may be driving. What are some of those specific things, including cultural, responsiveness, welcoming environments, things like that would hopefully dig into some nuance in terms of what actually is driving families. Of course, you want your kids to have a great school, and there's a lot of other factors that contribute to that.
They said you're doing the qualitative work, but it sounds like you're doing a survey. So is it interviews or surveys or?
So yes, so I think there's both the qualitative piece that will be focus groups and community workshops, some of those things. Obviously the survey is quantitative based. We'll have a few qualitative questions within that. But I think the opportunity to dig down into what really are in those focus groups or in those community workshops, what are some of those kind of stories that families can tell about why they're making those decisions. And we will be ensuring, we have a Spanish facilitator on our team, so we'll be, in addition to translations and ensuring that those things are inclusive in multiple languages, ensuring there's a Spanish facilitated workshop, and then also looking into other multilingual types of qualitative environments as well.
And I have another, for Flo, for Kate and Rebecca, I was on slide 11, is it 11? Or 10, I think, sorry. I don't know that I totally understand this slide. And I don't know that my questions, I had a couple, and it might just be that I don't understand. But the all the comments you made about like the change in 17, 18, and then all these other changes, like, and the whole time I was like, where? Like, what are we talking about? Is it, like, I almost feel like it would be helpful if this was broken down, not that slide. So the one that says impact of boundary changes. Somehow I'm.
Yeah.
But if
so
like,
we
if that
do.
was,
go ahead.
If that was broken out by the different articulation areas that we could, because this is so we could better understand where was it balanced, where was it not, and it sounds like there was some difference between 13, 14 and 17, 18, and then 22, 23. So I just couldn't really make sense in my mind about like what we were actually saying or learning there. And then the other thing I wanted to ask was, it says the high number of boundary changes that took effect in 17, 18 appear to have had a subsequent delayed effect, with middle school changes having the largest effect. What do you mean by effect? Because is that even like a positive or negative? Like are you usually using like the statistical term effect? Like what is effect? Yeah.
Yeah, so it means that enrollment was more balanced as a result of boundary changes. So if you had one school that had a utilization of 55% of the school and another school that had a utilization of 95%, and then you change the boundaries between those two schools, do they stay at 55 and 95? Does one of them go to 100%, or does it kind of go in the direction that you would expect it to, which is one of them gains more students, one of them loses more students, and then the two schools end up being more balanced between them.
That's what effect means? There was the resulting balance we expected?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess just in general, I feel like that the slide could be really helpful, but I'm not an understanding trends. I just don't know that I am like getting what I'm supposed to from it. So I think that would be helpful to see more. Is it in somewhere else?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, we were just trying to go this number on the slide and then the number in the report and trying to find them in both places at once. Sorry. Yeah. Then go for it. Yep. Do you have?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
This is the problem. And now I was waiting for Zoom, and then we just have an awkward pause. Board members, other questions, comments that came up. Yeah, Director Miller.
Thank you for all the work as well as the background report. Greatly appreciated and very informative. A couple questions I have. We do talk about the declining birth rates, which we see, and you talked, I think, a little bit earlier about 5th grade to 6th grade. We lose children at certain time periods. Did you all look at in and out of district? Because I know that there's like we had 5,000 children leave the district in 2021 versus 3,000, 10 years previously. And as well as those children that have come into the district, that net has decreased substantially, about 40 or 50%. And so I'm curious as to if you took that into factors and then kind of tying to your work, understanding why people are coming into Jeffco. Like, what is the, I'd like more of them to come in. We had more of them coming in. So that would be helpful, I think, for us, what programs that they were attracted to come into the district. So that would be one. Going back, we've had an increase of children leaving the district going to other school districts alongside of us. Did you guys look at where they were going and how that impacted our neighborhood schools?
We didn't specifically look at in and out of district, but we do have a part of the report that has, we call it kind of residence attendance. So did the students go to the school where they, in the attendance area that they live in? And because there's so many schools and there's so many in and out of everything, we ended up creating a dashboard.
Yeah, I saw that.
Where you can choose which school. Right. Yeah, so you can choose which school you want to look at, and that also has out of district locations as well as a way to kind of be able to investigate the data, but we didn't speak to it specifically in the report.
Okay.
We are going to have some information in the school choice report, though, about students who are coming in from out of district and what those rates are in each of the schools. So that will be in that report.
Will you also have then the children that are leaving the district and where they're going for that choice component?
So we have the mean what we call the capture rate. So like how many students that are zoned to attend that school are actually attending that school. So it will break that down. We don't have it separated out by where they're going to, but that's where the chart that Kate mentioned can be helpful. It's an interactive diagram that you all can use.
Okay, so we don't know then where they would be going out of district, I guess is what we're saying.
We know that we can identify they're leaving, but not that where exactly they're going to.
Okay.
We have our own exit code data too. We can. We can look into that a little bit more. This is a triangulation of like our systems and the data that they're pulling as well. So it's something we can look into a little bit further.
Okay, I think that would be helpful since there's been an increased population leaving, and our net has been going down. The other question I have is related back to the enrollment as well. Overall, I think we have a loss of about 7,000 children over the 2012 to 2021, 22, or when that number was. And we've seen charters kind of stay stable. And at our neighborhood schools overall, we've lost about 11,000 children. So we've had an increase in our charter schools, but we've lost more in our neighborhood schools. And I'm wondering if we're going to be able to figure out, maybe that's in the qualitative work that you're going to be doing with your survey, why we have a larger loss at our neighborhood schools than we did overall for the district in general. And charters have pretty much stayed straight or stable as of the option schools. I just would think that would be important for us to understand in your survey work. And then can I ask one more question about your survey? So when you say, we'll be having people tell us where they're going, are you going to be able to ground them where they're actually located? So for example, if I were to Bell Middle School, if I live in the Bell Middle School area, will I tell you that and that I've choiced to Creighton Middle School? Will I know where you started and where you went?
So this is a really interesting question. It's something we're working on. The hard thing is that some of our families have multiple children going to multiple places. So trying to also figure out how they wouldn't have to take the survey for every single child they have necessarily, but they can help us understand generally if they are attending their neighborhood schools or not, and why. And so these are all things we're currently working on to make the survey user-friendly enough that folks will take it and that we get the information that we need. So some of it will have to be done also in more like interviews and focus groups too, so that we can more deeply understand these things.
Okay, that would be helpful. That'd be great. And then one last one, then I'll be finished. And that is when you're showing us where they're going, the live attend matrix, are you able to show us, say, for example, I'll use Bell Middle School again, that say I have 600 children that live in the Bell Middle School area. Would I be able to see a table? Is this what you're thinking of in the coming next round? Would I be able to say, of those 600, I know I can see it on your chart, on your dashboard that I was able to access, but would I be able to see 380 children stay at Bell Middle School, 25 go to Creighton, 25 go to, what's the option school right there? Not Maple Grove, Manning. Would I be able to see that in a table of some sort as opposed to just going on to the dashboard?
So it's not in a table in the school choice report. And the reason we didn't include it in a table is because y'all have so much choice that it was very overwhelming and difficult to put in a way without making the text like super, super small to read. So we're happy to talk with the district leadership team about ways that we might be able to present that in a different way. But when we were trying to put it together, it just did not look right in a table format.
Okay.
I would say we can also we can produce those reports that we have previously where it shows here's a school and here's where the live attend or the choice patterns that are happening. We have that for each school.
Okay.
So we look at that a lot.
Right.
And we can certainly provide that.
I just think that would be helpful when we're, I mean, I know that would be a big sheet for all the elementary schools, but it would start to, I think, get a little bit smaller as we get to the middle and high school levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Parker.
I have some more questions on that impact of boundary changes slide again, and whether the enrollment was balanced. When I look at the FCB dashboard, it's very clear that some elementary schools say within their boundary there's only 192 students, or school-age kids, and another elementary school may say there's 452. So they're already starting imbalanced, and I'm wondering if the boundaries were set based on the capacity of the school, or if it was just trying to get the equal numbers of school-age kids across boundaries, or,
Are you asking Director Parker about the origins?
Well, just, when you're changing a boundary, are you trying to just make it absolutely equal, 300, 300, 300 through all these elementary schools, or are you taking into account the school capacity is only 250?
Hi, Dr. Parker. So I think you take account of the capacities in the area, but I think it's scenario by scenario and situation by situation. And I think it depends on just, again, trying to balance out the enrollment, or trying to balance out whatever group of schools you're looking at. You're trying to stabilize and balance them out by redrawing those boundaries. And I think that, again, it's situationally by situation based, and we can look into if there's specific boundaries that you want us to track down origins to. We can absolutely do that.
Yeah, I was just struck by sometimes it looks like a school couldn't possibly, reach a good number because the students that are in the neighborhood, it's only 88, something like that. So we're putting them at deficit to start with.
Great. I have just a couple of questions for you. So, and it's a little bit along the lines of a concern mixed with, I think, where I see this work going. So this is incredibly helpful. And some of the numbers that we were presented with, like the 33% fewer households with children, and there's some of those numbers that are just, it contextualizes it in a way that I think is very helpful. That's not something to just rest on as, well, that's the problem, we don't need to look at anything else. That is just in and of itself a startling thing. And then when we look at the percentage, I don't know if it's still at 46%, but of our families that are choicing, to other neighborhood schools, to charter option schools, wherever they're choicing, that this puzzle has to be put together in a way that it's going to make sense. As we think about boundaries, and this is not really a question as much as it is a statement of concern, in what we have control over in terms of where parents end up sending their kids, we have some articulation areas that I do think are being hamstrung, and in part by our own district behavior in terms of how we think about the choice process. And I'm just going to call it out because it's incredibly frustrating to me. No, there's no school that is hamstrung more than Everett Middle School in our district by choice patterns. They lose more than a quarter of their students because we have an option school that's in our neighborhood where people are choicing. It's not a judgment call about that school, but it's a reality that school will continue, Everett Middle School will continue to struggle with enrollment because 27% of their students go to one middle school that's also in the home boundary. It's not a home school. That's not, like we have to think about these things in ways that are acknowledging that we're siphoning, one hand is tied behind their back. And that's in part because of the way that we have constructed this. And I don't know what those options are as a board. We live in an environment of choice enrollment. I don't want to mess with that. It's not a critique of that. I think it's more of a calling out that this is really important information The choice information, why parents are making choices, is really important information. And our own policies around how we think about balancing enrollment, we're not going to get there if we're not going to really look at how we're saying no sometimes. Like we have, at some point, we have to empower our schools with their own enrollment. And obviously you can tell I'm frustrated by this because it's my home school and I know it. And this dynamic is really hard to just sit with because it's such an extreme example. I looked through every one of the other schools. No one even half as much as that school. We have to do something about these things. So it's not a question for anyone to answer, but for us to answer collectively as we move forward and look at some of these patterns and trends, because it's really troublesome to me in the end that we can talk about it, but if we don't do anything about it, then I don't know what the past 4 years for me have been about because, that's what it's about for me. So.
Thank you, President School. I think if we don't know what the issue is, we can't change it. And this is, I think what Ty was speaking to before is we've done things in a very ad hoc way, potentially without thinking about the domino effects they have. Even at Arvada K-8, where there's like a leftover boundary change that wasn't done to really make that school a K-8 because it had schools feeding into it for middle school grades. And I think I want to set the expectation that we aren't looking to redo the boundaries of this entire district. We are looking to understand the choices that people make and understand the challenges that we have and the hot spots that we have as well, and how we can make some decisions or what those decisions might be that may balance things out. Because when we do have schools, like we need to make decisions that help them thrive. And so I think that this study, this piece Flo calls them tasks. This task, the next task around the choice patterns and trends, they're all helping us get smarter in a way that we can make better decisions and be smarter today than we were yesterday.
Yeah, and I completely appreciate that. And I don't think I'm even calling on the district. I'm really thinking about the board. Like I want for this board to look at this and think, what is our role and responsibility to think about how our policy and the way in which we're doing things is handicapping certain schools and certain communities. And I know we have those conversations about a lot of topics because we've chosen to dive in head first on a lot of difficult things as a collective. But this one is one to me where we're structurally hamstringing, and it seems like a barrier that can be addressed. And I don't even know that it needs to be district wide, but I do think we need to have the conversations around. Is it something that we can identify those hotspots and that's where we focus our effort and sort of triage it? Is it a more systems approach, which I know Superintendent Dorland is very interested in systems and not continuing to replicate the sort of, one-offs that we have been making, that has happened over time. Yeah, I guess that's the end of it. Yeah.
I want to second what you're saying. And also, it's making me think about when I think it was at the retreat, and areas were pointed out of possible focus, like North Arvada, because North Arvada has this trend of growing. But a mile away, we closed, in that area right over here, we closed 5 schools, right? So we're letting through the structure that we've created families' choice over to here. And now we're talking about building more schools or expanding those schools. Where can we send them back? Can we make the schools on the 1 or 2 miles away more attractive so they'll come back and not go to solutions that say we need to build a school, but how do we actually bring families back to their area and make it as attractive as we can so that that's how we balance it. That's why I was suggesting when we look at we can't just look at North Arvada and say, oh, it's growing, how are we going to deal with it? We have to say, what about these schools, this area right next to it that's increasingly declining, literally a mile and 2 miles from where we're talking about. So I feel the same way in that context of north and east, or west and east, North Arvada, whatever, Arvada, the whole of Arvada.
And so these are just, and then this is just what the board needs to prioritize to talk about, if it's a priority. If it's not, then that's just my rant for the evening. But, and sorry, Superintendent Dorland, you had said you wanted to say something, and then I just rolled past you.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I just think your example of Everett is a really good example of ad hoc decisions that have unintended consequences, and then create environments where folks in our schools are trying their best, but are really struggling. And I think our VATA K-8 and the enrollment trends and patterns that we've identified there is another great example. I do think the opportunities for this type of study over time is really powerful. And so I could not contemplate us creating sort of a facilities and programming master plan for our district without this type of information. And just to acknowledge, it's been difficult, I think, for all of us as we've done the work around closures and ROFs in phase 1 and phase 2 in not having sort of this type of analysis done to understand in this level of detail what the downstream implications might be. We didn't have a choice, and so I want to be clear about that. We were at the end of the road, and I know I've said this multiple times. I think we did the right work at the right time, the best that we could, and had to make some very difficult decisions and appreciate our communities who had to go through that with us very much. But this is the kind of information that I think can make us smarter tomorrow than we were today or yesterday. And it's the kind of thing that's going to help, Jeff Gatlin put together a facility master plan with his team. Brenna Copeland come side by side around that with enrollment and planning around budget and finances. And then also be able to put this side by side with Dr. Kim and her plans around academic programming for our district, especially once we know what families want, and for us to be in service to the interests of students and families in terms of their extraordinary student experiences. So, there's been kind of an assumption in the conversation that balancing enrollment across sites is the goal. And I actually don't know that that's the case. Right? I mean, in the high school reimagined conversation, we've been talking about the opportunity for students to have different size high school experiences with different size enrollments. And so it might not be balancing. And so I just think I just want to put a pin in the fact that this is such critically important work. I know it's taking a long time, which to me has been sort of like, where's the boundary study? And I feel impatient around it because we've had to make so many big decisions without it. But I do think it's the right thing to take our time with this and do it right and get some really good information, because the information will be very informative to a lot of work that we need to do in the next 2 to 3 years. So thank you to our partners.
Other questions, comments? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks on virtual land for coming and dropping by. And we look forward to the next phases that we talked about. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're moving on to the consent agenda. Item 7.01 through 7.18 are presented in board docs as a proposed consent agenda. Do I have a motion regarding the approval of the consent agenda?
Okay, I'm hitting a hiccup here because I know that we've got something going on.
Just the regular one.
Yeah, so I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented in board docs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, thank you. I would like to ask for the Bergen Valley 7.18 to be moved from the consent agenda for discussion.
Great. For the record, Director Miller requested we remove item 7.18, contract award Bergen Valley Elementary School addition, from the consent agenda. And so that will be removed, and we will add it to a discussion at the end of our vote. Yes, Director Parker.
So I have a question. I have a question on the approval of the settlement agreement. It's just a question. So does it have to be removed to get a question? It's 7.09.
I imagine that our legal counsel can help you with that. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Director Parker. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Sometimes it's just as simple as say, let's not vote yet, let me ask one question. But if you think it might be a more involved discussion requiring a separate vote, then you'd be better off to pull the item as you did with several.
It's a simple question, I think. When I read it, I was seeing a number in there that I thought was, well, I wasn't sure if it's Jeffco's portion of the settlement or just the whole settlement that happened nationally. So my question is, what is Jeffco's portion of the settlement?
Now you've asked me a hard one because I can't remember as I sit here. The settlement that's in this specific agenda item is supplemental to the one that you all approved a couple of months ago regarding the big jewel litigation. I believe this is an additional maybe 700,000-ish to Jeffco, right? And the overall was significantly larger because we're talking about hundreds of districts.
Yeah, because I think in this, it had millions, hundreds of millions or something, and so.
Sadly, that is not.
Yes, we're not getting it. Thank you.
Pretty much. Yeah. Any other discussion before we move forward? All right, it has been moved and seconded to approve items 7.01 through 7.17 on the consent agenda as published in board docs. No, now I'm going to move to approve 7.01 through 7.17. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that amended proposal? All right, it has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda items 7.01 through 7.17. Roll call, please, Ms. Savada.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
All right, now I'd like to turn back to item 7.18, Bergen Valley Elementary School addition. That was removed from the consent agenda and requires a separate vote. I'll open up the floor for discussion.
Thank you. I had just a few questions related to the Bergen Valley project, and I mentioned them. Fortunately, I was able to talk with Jeff last night. I think what I'm struggling with is that we're going through a similar pattern of increasing the project amount without necessarily going through the Moss Adams suggested, where we bring it forward to the CAC and we have the CAC review it, because it is a substantial increase above what the CAC has been seeing for the past number of months. And so my one question is, will at some point the CAC have a chance to talk about why there was this increase from what they've been seeing at their meetings on a monthly basis? That's number one. Number two, is this a guaranteed maximum price? Because my understanding from back in February or March of our presentations, we are now moving forward with guaranteed maximum price projects or contracts. And so I wasn't sure if that was the case for Bergen Valley. And then the third point is that we've increased it by $4 million, which is almost double the price that we originally had in the previous project budget. And how does that therefore then impact what we have left from our capital program? And because to me, this means we have less than what we thought we had in April, where the line was drawn with Moss Adams to review what we were going to have.
Thank you for those questions. Director Miller, I'm going to ask Mr. Gatlin and Mr. Reed to come on up because they're going to help me with this. Can you share with me again? So I will share with you while they're getting settled up here that the CAC in their August meeting did discuss this. And we have the PowerPoint presentation and some estimates of what this could cost us in their August presentation and materials.
Okay.
They've also done several reviews about the Roth's investments. And I know when we presented to the board some of what we needed to do to combine these two schools, we had talked about using the funds from Bergen Valley that had been unspent on the K-2 school and investing those into the 3-5 school. And then we updated the board last spring around, as we got into the design and working further with the DAG, around how, on a rough order of magnitude, how much more we thought that investment was going to cost us.
Okay.
And so on the CAC issue, they have been reviewing it, and they did look at it in August. And we just recently got the bid in. On the CMGC piece, I think we did do some CMGC work this summer because of the fast turnaround to get the schools ready for students to come. but I do not believe there was a decision that we would be doing CMGC moving forward, just period. So with all that context that I have, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Gatlin, and then Mr. Reed can jump into, because he's been on this project since the beginning. So.
Yeah, I think what I would like to do is have Mr. Reed just talk through the CAC's involvement in this project, because it started prior to the August meeting. And I think it's important. I think it gets to a really important issue around how are we interfacing with the CAC, and when we have updates, when there's scope changes, when there's pricing changes, how are we interacting with that group? So maybe Mr. Reed, you could talk a little bit about that. And then I think it's important to understand what's changed in the project, maybe from when we saw it at one point, why is it $4 million more now, and talk through a little bit of the scope and where we landed with it.
So we first presented the design, or the proposed design, for Bergen Valley at the November 2022 CAC meeting. And then we have had it in every subsequent meeting, because it's gone through some iterations. And initially in the November meeting, it was a 2-story addition. That was what was proposed. And then as we got more information on proposed costs and things like that, we decided to scale it back to a 1-story addition with a little bit bigger footprint. And it significantly reduced the cost. And we have continued to bring them up to date at each meeting. It is, and you can go back to the CAC presentations and you'll see it under the construction update portion of the program. I think that as far as the GMP goes, what Superintendent Dorland is correct. Right now, we've seen a very positive construction market. Right now, we're getting the kind of participation that we need to see. We had 8 bidders on the Bergen Valley project. We had 7 bidders on the Drake project. So we're getting the kind of participation that 6 months ago, when we were getting 1 or 2 bidders, we were getting very poor pricing. So we went CMGC on the summer ROFS projects only because we had such a short time frame to actually do the design work, get the pricing, and then get it constructed, which we successfully did with virtually all of the ROFS projects that were scheduled for August.
The other thing I want to just bring up is Mr. Reed mentioned the sort of like back and forth on scope for this project. It has been, I would say, very collaborative with the community. You remember we had the public hearings with the Bergen Valley community, and they were part of the ROFS community engagement. As part of that, they did share a lot of their interest in, if we're going to combine our schools, this is what we would like to see in the building. In addition to that, and so that was a lot of back and forth, right? What can we afford, and what do they want, and how do we find as much as they want with what we can afford? So those are always just important conversations to have with communities to try to find that just right balance. In addition to that, we began to hear from neighbors in the neighborhood around the access point for the building and the in and out of that area, especially if there's some sort of emergency and daily traffic patterns. And so there's been some additional site work that was unforeseen that we've been dealing with in response to the neighborhood in order to be a good neighbor and really understand the implications of the school site. So those are just 2 examples of why things have kind of ebbed and flow over since November that I think are important for the board to know about. And it's in the interest really of being collaborative with the community, not only the school community, but the community that is in and around the building.
The site work has probably added about $2.5 million to the cost of the project.
And honestly, given this, I think we were all pleasantly surprised at the bid that came in. Just honestly, we were worried it was going to be more. And so we were kind of doing some high fives, just grateful that we had a lot of interest from many contractors, which made it a very competitive process, especially in the mountains.
Yes.
So then the third question being, how does this impact then if the Moss Adams drawing the line in the sand from April on what we knew that we might have available at the time to where we might be now, how are we going to be adjusting? Because that will impact then other investments that we want to make.
So so when we report to the CAC next week, then the number that we've been carrying as the current budget will be corrected to reflect the bids that we have. And then the unallocated contingency will be adjusted.
And what number were you carrying prior to next week, Tim?
We were carrying the 5.7 million that was the transfer from Bergen Meadow into the Bergen Valley account. And the numbers that we were receiving from the consultants, we were not comfortable with at all. I mean, they were very, very high. And so we went with this. We pegged the cost at $9 million when we showed you the projected cost for all of the ROFS projects. And that was based really on we knew what the addition to Prospect Valley cost. And then we knew we had the added site work in there too. So that's kind of how we arrived at the 9 million. And we were quite pleased that actually it came in at 8.3.
So I think the alignment with being able to know exactly what we had back in February, where we did have the savings that we highlighted of $17+ million, and what the budget or what we were going to have left over then for contingency or premium or whatever we're calling it, should have been adjusted then, I think, to allow for the $9 million price tag, as opposed to what we were carrying in the CAC price tag, because that's a variance, correct? Of about $5 million. And so that ripples through then what we saved versus what we were going to have available for additional projects.
Yeah, and when we made the decision to engage with Moss Adams to do the reconciliation work, we did give it's April, right? They're going through April.
Yeah.
They're going through April. We did give them that direction, and I believe we have a tracking document that takes everything from April to now, so that once we get their reconciliation, we can then add on what we know has been going on between now and then. And so this will be another $4 million, and that's why it's represented as such in your board materials.
So will they include that in the report?
No, because it's post-April.
So the report that will be made public won't include those numbers.
Correct. It won't include anything since April in terms of overages.
So the big question, how much money do we have left, won't be accurate in the report.
It will be accurate once we apply what we've been tracking.
But it won't be in the report. I think is what you're saying. We have to actually kind of like get a report and then add on extra after.
Yes, because we made the decision that they needed to have a hard
numbers.
They needed to have a hard stop date so that they could work towards an end date that we actually knew the expenses on. Because once you start projects, they ebb and flow so much, right? So we gave them the end of April, and we've been tracking since then.
Well, it makes sense. Just what you're saying, Director Miller, is super important. That we have to have those numbers when we have the next discussion, which is what are we going to do with that amount, and can we fund?
Correct.
Yeah.
Director Reed. So I can assume, I think then that we would have an addendum to the report that would say, here's what Moss Adams found, and here's what we've been tracking since then. And so here's the addendum with the adjusted numbers, and that would be given to us and made public.
Brenna's not here, but sure, I think that's a good idea. I think we're waiting and working with Moss Adams to get the initial report. Once we have that and we have time to process it, we'll be thinking about opportunities, number one, for the board to study that report and understand what Moss Adams has to say. And then how do we shift from there into the conversation around what is remaining, given some of the investments that have made between April and now, and what are the priorities for the board in regard to those unallocated funds. And of course, as we were talking about property disposition, sort of where does that head in the coming 6 to 12 to 18 months? What does that mean for the budget? So the budget's going to start to, the capital reserve is going to start to sort of come into focus a little bit more, and also depend upon things like property disposition.
So I guess thinking moving forward, when we start to have these reports that are going before the people who are the committee and advisory committee, is being able to have maybe ranges. Like, we are thinking that it's going to be $5.5 million. We know Prospect Valley, I think we talked about this when we were talking about the cost of things. Prospect Valley is costing us, I think it was 500 and something a square foot. Tim, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was in that ballpark. Do we at least start to put in the CAC reports ranges so that we have an understanding of what those boundaries might look like? I think that would be helpful to understand, because the 5.5 million is different than the 9.4 that we're looking at significantly. And so to me, it would be helpful for you guys that the ranges would be, in a band, because that's just a lot of money. We saw it in different patterns. We saw it in different presentations.
Yes, and and I think we did estimate 9 million at one point, but it wasn't necessarily in the formal CAC report as that.
Right.
So that's what I hear you saying. And I think when you're talking early on in a project's sort of infancy, a range can make some sense because you don't know. And so that's just being honest about what you don't know. So thank you for that suggestion. I also think one of the things we've tried to do here is to include soft costs. And so there's clarity not only in just you all are approving the contract, which is the construction costs, which is why it's on your consent agenda. But the overall project costs include things like architecture and engineering, FF&E, and even these numbers don't include the FF&E, which we've notated on this document. And then sometimes schools contribute some of their underspend to projects. And then what's published around the construction cost doesn't match the project budget, and it then doesn't match the real project budget when you also add in with the schools contributing. So we are working on ways, now that we've transitioned some of the financial oversight to our finance team, we are working on ways to better and more consistently report various budgets and the parts of different budgets that are in these huge, complicated construction projects. And that has been something that Moss Adams had suggested to us in their first phase of the work. So we've been doing that. We've been working on that, but we probably still have some work to do.
Because that is what we saw in previous presentations. We saw a contract, but then we also saw the FF&E that was allowed. I think we had anywhere from 15% to 23% budgeted, and we use bond money for that purpose, and that's a draw that we're using for those projects. So just being able to explain to the community clearly, these are ranges and soft costs and all in, I think is something to aspire to in regards to what Moss Adams has suggested as well.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Director Miller? If a project falls outside of the range, for whatever reason, what would your hope be around our next steps in working it through our processes?
I think it's always been just a rationale, like how did we get there? What was the decision-making process? So, for example, we have $9 million for the Bergen Park back in February. We had, the presentation in that same presentation saying these were all the savings that we were realizing of $5.4 million from Bergen Elementary School. So that went into the savings category of what we were not going to have to spend, right? So that's our weirdness of ROFs and our construction costs. So that's one bucket, and I hope we don't have to keep doing that, frankly. But in general, when I'll go back to my favorite project, Alameda, when it was brought before us that it was going to be, we had thought it was X millions of dollars, and it came in quite substantially over that and continued to be spent. Being able to understand why ahead of time, not just put on the consent agenda, because I think it's important to have these discussions about how our capital program is changing and why it's changing. And I think that's just transparency for people to understand, so that, hey, if we're putting this much more millions of dollars in, what are we giving up? Like, what do we have to be a little bit more thoughtful about? Because we're taking from one to give to another. That would be my ask, is just the transparency and clearing what we're doing in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mr. Reed, did you have something else you wanted to say before we?
All I was going to say was that since the Bergen Valley wasn't really part of the capital improvement program, it wasn't set up in the same fashion. So what you see in the 9.7 up there are the soft costs to date plus the contract amount, not the 23.8 and all of that, all the individual lines. So.
And I get that. I understand. It's just from a budget perspective, you see it's double, even, yeah. So I think we're on the same page.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion before we have a motion on item 7.18? Okay. Is there a motion on this consent agenda previous item?
I move to approve item 7.18, Bergen Valley Elementary School addition as posted in board docs.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we've already had discussion. Any further? Nope. Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve item 7.18, contract award for Bergen Valley Elementary School addition. Roll call, please, Ms. Sabata.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right, our last-ish, close-ish to last agenda item is an opportunity for the Board of Education to discuss the request that Jeffco Public Schools join the multi-district litigation that is pending against certain social media companies for their alleged role in the youth mental health crisis affecting schools. The participation agreement was made available prior to tonight's meeting for review via board docs, and the board received legal advice on this item in executive session last week. Before I open up the discussion, is there anything you would like to add, Superintendent Dorlin?
I just want to remind the board that we did have a conversation about this last week in an executive session with Counselor Tolleson, and the board's request was to have a public discussion at the board table about this topic prior to making a decision. And so with that, I think it's mostly time for the board to talk to one another about their thinking since the last conversation and be able to discuss what you all feel you need to discuss prior to moving to a decision.
And we obviously have Ms. Tolleson here if we have other questions that we want to drag her into our fun times. So board members, comments and any other pieces of discussion that we want to have. Part of this is the intention to make sure that there's clarity in kind of what this is as we're thinking about voting to engage in this process and making sure that we have the opportunity to issue any comments that we want to have before moving forward with the vote. So I'll open it up. Is there anyone that would like to begin? Director Parker.
Thank you. In the pertinent facts, when we talked about the Juul litigation, I feel like that was fairly straightforward. It was one company, and it was very descriptive what they were doing. In the social media area, there are more players, and it seems a little more complicated in trying to figure out if they're doing something or not doing it. So I just wanted a little clarification on what Ms. Tolleson thinks in comparing the two.
Thank you, Director Parker. These are larger entities, right? These defendants. The other one did have multiple corporate entities involved, all with different sort of roles in the process in terms of developing, marketing, and manufacturing vaping products. So there's no question there's additional complexity. I think in terms of what it would mean for Jeffco's legwork, for lack of a better term, the description from the outside counsel who's asked us about our interest in joining is that it would be pretty similar. What they're doing is because it is such a massive case with so many school district plaintiffs, they're looking for general statistical profiles in some categories yet to be defined, and I entrust that to their fine minds in the sort of consumer protection and youth protection space. So I don't know exactly, but I would imagine for us it would be a similar amount of work, and the agreement, again, is a full contingency basis. So other than the labor involved in providing that data, not a downside financial risk for us. So even with the additional legal and corporate complexity, I don't know that that changes the equation from a Jeffco perspective.
Thanks, Ms. Wilson. Any other comments? And I will say one of the conversations, I mean, as we move forward, just socially speaking, I mean, it is a reality that our kids are on screens more. And a lot of that, and we have an initiative through Jeffco, which has been awesome, Tech for Ed. Did I say that right? For some reason, it sounded wrong when I just said it, Tech for Ed, where our kids are really engaging on screens in educational focus, with educational focus, as part of to enrich their learning. And so there is this is obviously something very different than what we're doing as an organization focused on educating children. This is very specific to social media and the impacts, not just for mental health, body image, cyberbullying, but also some of the things, the sort of destruction of school property that's happened through some of these platforms. And so I just want to make sure that our listening public understands that there's a big difference in what we're talking about here. It's not saying screens, it's saying the very specific targeted social media platforms that are under discussion in this case. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Yep, Director Miller.
So picking up on that, Ms. Tolson, when we are asked to provide information to our attorneys that would be representing us, are we going to have to give line items related to, say, for example, damage that has been done to our schools? Or we'll be giving guesstimates or estimates based on the number of kiddos that we serve or the number of schools that we have and the number of children that we serve within those schools? How are they thinking of using those calculations or determining those calculations?
That has not fully been set out yet as the plaintiffs. It's really a steering committee, works collaboratively to determine the best metrics for that. But what I strongly suspect is it won't involve anything as granular and fact specific as like amount of damage. Instead, it's a sort of a statistical modeling kind of thing, right? You applying what's happening nationwide and then drawing conclusions based on numbers and size of schools and student population demographics and sort of those large data sets. That's certainly what we saw last time.
And who gets to be on the steering or advisory committee? Do you have an idea? Like, will it be by state or would it be by size?
No, it's a steering committee of a consortium of law firms that are representing all of these different districts, because what had happened is cases were being filed sort of one-offs around the country. And then the idea is those need to be consolidated in a coordinated effort. And that's where they were all moved to the federal district in the Northern District of California, which is where the Jewel case was coordinated as well. And some of the same firms on behalf of school districts, including the same firm we were used in the Jewel litigation, are on that steering committee. But let's say our lawyers, if you all choose to join this, are not the only ones involved in this pretty massive effort.
Okay. And would we, when we talk about the settlement, ideally, when we talk about how we would spend those dollars, that they would go back into the mental health or wherever it's directed for the purpose of benefiting students? Is that what we're still thinking about in terms of following a pattern of Jewel? Of the Jewel decision?
Similar to what we're doing with the Jewel settlement, where Mr. Palero's team is, from a health services perspective, considering investments with those funds to counteract some of the implications that have occurred.
It would go back to serve the students then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Director Reed.
I mentioned this before when we did this in the study session, but I do want to put it out there again. I think both with the Jewel settlement and this, I really like the idea of holding big companies accountable when they deliberately use the fact that our young people's brains are developing and they use that to their detriment. I like holding them accountable, but I think one of the most important things that we can do for kids is to empower them. So I really, really want kid voice in how we spend these funds. I want them to have a say about, what is it that they think will be effective with their peers to help them with addictions, whether it is to vaping or to social media.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, and we have had that conversation, and I know that Superintendent Doan and Mr. Polero have heard that, and I think it's awesome. Any other questions, comments before we move? Yep, Dr. Varda.
Yeah, I still find this a little bit confusing, not what it is or why it is or addiction or anything like that. It's just, I also like holding big firms accountable for all of this, but if I were the big firm in this lawsuit, I would go, okay, schools, what are you doing to help this issue also? And I don't know what all the arguments are, but so that's what I'm asking myself. If we're going to agree to this, what are we doing to tackle social media addiction? And I know this is different from devices and how we do curriculum on tablets. I totally get all of that. It's just, I don't want to be hypocritical and say, shame on you all, but we're not doing anything inside our schools to tackle this very, very, very difficult thing. I don't know what campaigns we have. We talked about this during the Jewel thing. We could list off all the things we were doing to combat vaping. I can't list off all the things that we're doing to help kids empower them and to get them past these addictions and help them learn good behaviors. My kids have experienced a little bit of like cyberbullying, conversations. But anyways, so I think as a board, again, I think if we're going to say, yes, we're going to do this, we have to hold ourselves accountable as well for saying we believe this is a problem and we believe that it's something that the schools should be thinking about also.
We do support students with understanding internet safety. So that's something that is happening in our schools. I'm sure Ms. Ibeck can share more about that if the board is interested. And so I understand that our schools are microcosms of our society, but our primary focus is to be a world-class education system where all students can achieve their biggest dreams. And if we get so busy doing everything that is coming at our students in our society today, we will never be successful at achieving the academic outcomes that we want for our kids. So I would just suggest that we do things to make sure that our students understand internet safety. And at some point, we have to be able to focus on educating students around the standards and providing them extraordinary student experiences. And there are just a lot of distractions in this space that keep impacting our students' mental health.
Clarify, I was not suggesting that we don't spend the majority of our attention on creating extraordinary academic experiences for our kids. I'm just saying we should do what we say. If we vote, we should do the thing. So it's just bothering me a little that we would sign on to this huge thing and then that's it, So I'm definitely not suggesting that we don't pay attention to those priority areas for our students.
I wonder if a point of clarification or just clarity, because I know between, I think, Ms. Ibeck and Mr. Polero and others, there is probably a long list of things that are currently happening. Part of it is just it's a large organization. And so understanding what are the current things that are being done. We block certain platforms on school devices that you cannot access on social media, can't access social media, and education campaigns. I don't know what all the things are, and I don't want to make them up from up here. But I wonder if that's something that we could get some information on as a board as well, and then figure out if there's certain pieces and parts of that we want to elevate or support in other ways, at least we'll have the starting point of knowing what it is.
Yep, I can have Ms. Ibeck be point on providing some information about that in an upcoming board update, just so you have lens into what are the things we're doing where we're sort of putting our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Great. That'd be wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move to a motion? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the representation agreement as presented in board docs, approving the district's participation in mass joinder litigation against certain social media companies, and authorizing the superintendent to sign the attorney-client engagement agreement and associated documents.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. It's been moved and seconded. The board approved the representation agreement as presented in board docs. Roll call, please. Ms. Sabata.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Schooley,
Yes.
Dr. Varda.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. It has been approved. All right. So the final portion of our meeting is for us to provide some updates to one another. I know, don't get packed up. That's what my students do in class. I start in, I'm like, put your backpack back down on the ground, please. I know. This is our closure. We're reflecting, people. Yeah. So Superintendent Derlin, would you like to kick us off?
I would like to kick us off. So I'm excited to share that this week we conducted our first leadership learning walk with the Chatfield Articulation Area. John Thanos, principal of Chatfield High School, hosted us. And it was me, Dr. Kim, Chief of Schools Dave Weiss, facilitated by Renee Nikithodes, our Chief Academic Officer. Mr. Polero was there as our Chief of Student Success, and all of the principals from the articulation area. And it was, and Amanda Perazio was also with us, who's our, works with Dave and his team. So, I mean, it was just fantastic. We went into high school math classrooms. We visited 4 classrooms in groups of about 4 or 5, and we all visited the same classrooms. And then we came back and we just discussed the instruction that we saw, and gave the school some feedback and took away some feedback for the district as well. I just want to say that the feedback from the principals was, this is incredibly impactful for me to see how another school is implementing the strategies from Jeffco Thrives in a way that makes sense for this school community. They really enjoyed norming. So the goals of this process are really to build trust with our schools and partnership between central services and our schools. We also really want to norm our understanding of instructional excellence. So, we have these strategic plans all over the place in public ed, and we have these fancy words and terms, but getting down into the classroom level to say, what do we mean when we say this? And when I say it, is it what Dr. Kim thinks is excellent as well, and what the principals think is excellence? And so that's part of the goal here. We end up providing some feedback to the school, and then the principal gets to decide, what to do with that feedback with his or her leadership team and staff. It also allows us as district leaders to identify patterns and trends across our schools that we may need to begin to develop supports for. So not every principal is having to figure it out if there are some patterns and trends. So it was really great, and I would like to just call out Mr. Thanos and the Chatfield leadership team, the Chatfield staff, and the math teachers who opened up their classrooms to us and had groups of district leaders, principals from the articulation area walking through, talking to their kids, writing things down. We did a lot of pre-work and communication to the staff and teachers so that they knew we weren't coming in to evaluate them or their classroom. We understood it was a snapshot in time, but it was really a gift that they gave to us so that we could learn about how the work we have put in place is impacting the day-to-day experiences of our students and teachers. So it was a fantastic experience. We're doing 2 a month-ish. We will be doing this in every articulation area this year, and I think it's a game changer, not only for our district team to really see what's happening on the ground to inform our work and how we support schools, but also for our schools to see us caring enough about the work they do with kids every day to come see, and in partnership with them, not in an effort to judge, but really in an effort to support and do the work side by side. So very grateful to the Chatfield High School staff and teachers and leadership team for allowing us to begin in their school. I want to acknowledge that I know we've been receiving communications and we've had some feedback about some transportation challenges in the district, and we kicked off the year knowing we were going to have transportation challenges. Every district across the state and nation is struggling with driver shortages, and that's continuing. And so I just want to make sure that you know our new executive director, Terry Slemons, and Jeff Gatlin are working really hard with our transportation leadership team to make sure that every seat is filled on our buses and that we really do have drivers. We have found some recent success using the platform Indeed to support recruiting new candidates. Mr. Slemons, I think, has hired more than 10 people based on what I've seen, Mr. Gatlin, that are in process of training and getting their CDL to then be a driver for us. He also, comes to us from a large and mid-district experience in Texas. So he has some different ideas about how we can streamline the training experience so that drivers are driving sooner but still have the licensure that they need to drive and the safety measures. And he's just been really bringing some fresh perspective. So I'm grateful for that. We are also working with our schools site by site where we have some traffic pattern issues. And it's just sort of our buses running into traffic from either drop off and pick up from families or just regular traffic on our roads. So those are other hotspots that we're dealing with. I just want our board and our listening public to know that we know that we are working on things when we get the feedback from our families. And we don't have all the answers, but we are working hard to try to solve the issues along the way. I also want to highlight Summit Jeffco, which is happening not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And I don't have my talking point in front of me. It is September 23rd. Did I say that right? Yes. Out of memory. On September 23rd, we have over 300 people signed up to come to our first Summit Jeffco, which will be an opportunity for families. Speaking of mental health and the most recent action that the board just took, I am going to have the opportunity to have a fireside chat with a psychologist who's an expert in youth mental health. And so just really excited to be able to have an authentic conversation with her in front of our families so that they can get just some ideas, understanding, and perspective from a professional and an expert in this arena. And then we have many, many breakout sessions where families can explore everything from how does this work in the district to how do I support my student with this issue that he or she may be having with school. And so I strongly encourage board members to attend. I strongly encourage our listening public to sign up. There will be prizes. Our first team will be there, so you can meet them and get to know the folks who are there for anybody who might need to call the district for any reason and get support in finding the right answers for their family. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that. And I also want to thank our team, our communications team, and others who have been working on putting this together. It's no small feat. It's at Green Mountain High School on September 23rd, and it starts at the time that is sent to you in your email and on our website and published on our website. It's either 8 or 9. Me too.
Morning.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning.
The start time for the summit, 9 a.m. Perfect. I'm excited. It's gonna be a good time. And we're gonna have a second one in the spring. So this is the first of 2 this school year. And then I also have superintendent conversations coming up in various articulation areas. And those were so well attended last year. I'm looking forward to those conversations as well, and excited to see what's on the minds of our families as I get to get out there and talk to them also. So thank you.
There's a lot going on. And for anyone going to the summit training, Miss Parker will be there, and I don't know if there's anyone else, but she's committed to doing karaoke for her closing speech, right?
Excellent. Are you running a session?
Mm-hmm. I lie when I'm zoning. All right, anyone else would like to go next? Miss Parker's going to sing us a song.
Unfortunately, I will not be doing karaoke. I am really excited to be back in the swing of things with the schools opening and have started visiting a lot of the schools. And especially, I went to Little Elementary School, Moore Middle School, and Pomona High School with Dr. Varda, and it was exciting to see how they're already preparing for the integration next year and what they're doing right now, busing some of the kids over for math and French, which is my degree, so I thought it's wonderful. So that was good, and then we also went to see Lawrence Elementary School and Arvada K-8 and Arvada High School. So again, that's another area where the students and staff are going to be affected with things coming up now. I also attended the ROF's presentation at Arvada K-8. I attended Alameda's International Ribbon Cutting, which was perfect. It was such a blue sky that day for Colorado. Yep. I've started attending CAC meetings again and attended the SAC kickoff. And then I think the highlight of what I did too was attend the marching festival of the marching bands, high school marching bands, and that was so fun. Things have really changed. I mean, you got electric guitars in your marching bands now, so yeah. So anyway, it was great.
Who'd like to go next? Thank you, Director Parker. Great.
Stole my thunder. No. It's been really nice to do a school visit with another board member. I would highly recommend it. It's just a nice kind of way to spend time together that we are allowed to, and in that way. So, yeah, it was actually really nice. So I would love to do that with anyone, actually. But yeah, it was nice to go and see Principal Rock. It sounded weird when I said that, but just he's so enthusiastic, so excited, and like ready for this. And so it was really fun to go see that. And then, just getting to go to all of the schools, I feel like I learned a lot. Actually, we went to the Arvada K-8 visit the day after the meeting. So really fresh on our minds. And it was great to tour that school. I have not done a lot of, I've done all but like 5 of the things that Mary has done. But I just like being back in the schools. I have been noticing our bus drivers. They're just out there, like they talk to all the kids. Like and our SROs are just out in full force. And so dropping off kids like crazy, because I have 3 start times that range from, 8 to 9 a.m. So I'm at the schools all morning driving around, and it's been really nice to be back. So just happy to be there.
I find myself waving to Jeffco bus drivers, anticipating they're going to know who I am, and they do not know who I am. And I'm just like that person, like this. Thank you for what you do.
You know how some will park while they're waiting in between their shifts? And I'm like, I'd like to like bring them a muffin. I'm like, would that be weird if I pulled over and like said, thank you? But yeah, they will. It's nice to see them.
Gratitude is never unwelcome.
Or I could just hold a sign out the window every time, because she's always in the same spot, and I could just drive by every time at the sign. She'll get to know me.
Whether she wants to or not, she will. All right. Director Reed, Director Miller, we would like to go next. Yeah, Director Reed.
Okay, well, I'm feeling really slow because my school visits start tomorrow. But I'll get a number of those in, so that'll be great. But I always have that advantage of the Green Mountain Community Connections, so I get to sort of find out what's going on at all the schools in Green Mountain anyway. And so I was really excited to hear that really pretty much all of the elementary schools have right out of the gate started with community building things, whether those things are, there was a carnival, a movie night, a family fun night, actually 2 movie nights. So like just various things, because all of the schools in those areas have gotten some of the Green Mountain Elementary kids. So they're all kind of just making sure that they're building community right out of the gate. And so I was really excited to hear that. Dunston, the principal at Dunston and the principal at Green Mountain High School took the opportunity to really highlight the growth in their math scores. And both of them said that they felt like it was the IM curriculum that was really making the big difference. So they were very pleased with that. both acknowledged that their ELA needs some work, and I think we've acknowledged that our ELA curriculum at the secondary level needs some work. So that all seems to go hand in hand. But it's just exciting to hear that they're getting results when the district is helping them out with things. So that was good to hear. Initially, they started off talking about the challenges of the time changes and how that was affecting teachers trying to get childcare for their children and, all of those things. But then both the Dunstan and Green Mountain principals talked about how nice it is to not have zombies first hour, that the difference in kids at the beginning of the year is so obvious. So that was also really, really good to hear about. And I'm almost hesitant because it feels like things have simmered down, but I want to make something really clear because in August we had some issues, and because we had a speaker today, and I think that there's some misconceptions. I cannot think of anything in our curriculum that is designed to really confuse kids about gender identity or sexuality, or we address those things and we say that those things exist. And that's an important thing for kids to know because they exist. Because as things are, they're going to meet trans people. They're going to meet intersex people who have chosen not to go one way or the other in choosing a gender identity. And that's not designed to confuse kids. That's designed to help them know what exists in the world. And we certainly do not want to ever encourage kids to deceive families. However, we have agreed that we are going to respect kids' identities. And we specifically state in our goals that we are going to respect the identities of our students and our families, and that includes respecting the pronouns that a student desires to use. And I support that for our students. I support our teachers in supporting our students and using respectful terms that the kids want used for them. And I also want to make really clear to people who may not understand the sort of the division of authority that this board has no authority, nor should it have authority over what our association leadership does. We certainly want to work in collaboration with our associations, but we can't tell them what to do. It would be inappropriate. That's not a situation that exists in any industry where between management and employee representation groups. So I just wanted to make that really clear for the people who have contacted us and said, you need to tell union leadership to do this or to do that. It's really not an appropriate boundary for us to breach. And so I just wanted to make that clear in case people weren't clear on it. And I'm dismayed at some of the harsh vitriol that has been directed at our educators. I think there are ways to express frustration without rants that are quite frankly not about, I think you're deceiving parents and you shouldn't, but really are about, I think people who fall into the LGBTQ plus community are broken in some way, and I'm saying that gently. What was in some of the messaging that I heard was disgraceful. And it does make me concerned for our students' safety when they hear adults speak of them that way. So I just wanted to say from the board table that I support our students wherever they are and whoever they are, and I support our teachers and our other educators in supporting them. And I recognize the boundaries between what happens here at the board table and what the association does. And if you have an issue with us, take it up with us. If you have an issue with the association, take it up with the association. But we're not going to be stepping into that, stepping over that boundary.
Thank you, Director Reed. Director Miller?
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to echo Mary's point about Alameda's blue ribbon. That was just a wonderful big scissors and great time and balloons, and the dancing was phenomenal. They had it all lined up when you walked in, and there was wonderful music, and they just made it a great celebration. And we had, I think, the first SAC meeting at Alameda, where everybody came and walked through the building, and it was a really nice presentation. So kudos to all of them, and to Susie for really just making it kind of a celebration for the year. And I hope we get air conditioning in the theater area, auditorium. That's just an aside, just putting that out there. And then I also was at the DAC kickoff with Mary as well. I kind of followed Mary. And we had a great time just meeting people and hearing what was going to be happening. And I think David and Tara are doing great work with the DAC and how it's being launched. I also want to say thank you to Mr. Gatlin for joining a conversation with Professor Allen out of Harvard. He is the lead professor at the air, I don't know exactly the name of it, but he heads up air quality IAQ at Harvard. We had a conversation with him last Friday, I think it was, or Thursday, or no, Tuesday, last Tuesday. And we talked about just, the challenges for air quality in schools and how important that is. And we talked with him about the technology of UVC and would that make sense and what problems we're trying to solve. And so I think he's open to continuing to talk with us. And I think, however Harvard can be helpful would be helpful for us. So I'm looking forward to that continuing work. And I will echo Ms. Reed's comments. We need to be consciously aware that we are a community of families and teachers and people that work in our buildings, and children that we serve is our first and foremost. There's always a chair in my head sitting right there that's our job, is focusing on kiddos. And the relationships that we have in our community are critical, and we need to be accountable to each other. And so I think this year is going to be a good year. We're starting off on a great course, and I'm looking forward to going around to my schools shortly. So Jen, I'll be contacting you. Thanks. It's on my list.
Awesome. So I'll just round it out. I got to everybody, correct? Yes. Sure.
Actually, thank you, Jennifer, for getting I'm like emailing her constantly. So thank you for helping get all the stuff scheduled.
Big ups to Ms. Sabata. So just a few other things really just to make other people aware of. So Outdoor Lab is hosting their annual fundraiser this weekend. And I just wanted to highlight it, it'd be great if everyone went, but mostly just to appreciate the work that they do in partnership with our district. And it's such a sort of seminal experience for students to be able to participate in Outdoor Lab. So I'm excited to be able to support them at their fundraiser. And you can always write a check, even if you don't want to go or can't go. So write a check to Outdoor Lab. I want to express some appreciation to all of the parents and community members, families, and students that came to the first round of community conversations that are really challenging around the regional opportunities for thriving schools, the phase 2. Those are difficult, and I appreciate that people are spending their time there and sharing with us, what's awesome about those schools, but then also, kind of starting to have some of those conversations. I think it's, as a board member, really important to listen to and hear. Also, a big thank you to the first team. This is the first year of the first team, and they've been showing up in some really, I think, to me as a board member, really incredible ways. Some of the challenges that we've been able to ask them to lean into, and they've been so incredibly responsive. So as a kind of new unit within district, and one of the roles from the central space that's directly helping families and people in school buildings to help resolve challenges, answer questions. And I feel like that responsiveness can do nothing but good in the world. So a big thanks to that team. And lastly, because we have the National Suicide Awareness the proclamation. We've had some folks speak about it, just to encourage that access to QPR training is widespread. I don't know if there's something on the district website that offers training or lists training dates. I don't know. I'm looking at you. I'm just putting you on the spot, Mr. Polero. Sorry. You're like, this is your update, not mine.
I don't know that it's been on the website, but it's been advertised through different communication methods. I'll follow up with my team tomorrow and make sure that it is, though.
Great. And I've seen it through like Peach Jar as a parent. Your parents get information that comes through some of the tech platforms that we use to keep people informed. And my husband and I both have gone through it twice, just as once as a training and once as a refresher, and have taken our oldest child through it as well. And so I just encourage anyone, typically they're free, and it's a really amazing way for each of us to support one another and be good to each other and be asking good questions and looking with love after each other. So I just encourage everyone to avail themselves of that training if they have the time. All right, that brings us to the end of today's agenda. We're going to stand adjourned. Our next meeting is a special session, a public hearing scheduled for October 2nd at 6:30 p.m. at Coal Creek Canyon K8. So have a wonderful night and be safe.